cell phone, an old rotary phone, calling play-by-play for Chaminade. So
that is last case scenario. We had a couple games when we were doing arena football 2 summers ago where the box actually went out. It's like the unit itself, the Comrex, just completely died, and you just pick up the phone, you call in, and that's how they get you on the air.
Well, I enjoyed it. I really did. If there was anything out of whack there, I'd probably be a little bit more critical of you guys. But I just thought, and you guys are, especially you, man, when I get a chance to not be here and listen to you from afar, I maintain, man.
No, I appreciate you. You always show love. And you also will let me know if there's something that we need to do better. So I sincerely appreciate you tuning in. And again, shout out to the Amador Cigar Lounge for last night's event.
Yeah, so to my point is that it's sort of what it is that Dusty said, that when he said, Orlando Cepeda gave me advice, and I think you asked him, I forgot where the question or how he arrived at the answer, but he talked about, it's one thing to hear it from a coach or a manager, but it's another thing to hear it from a player. And then he launched into a story about Henry Aaron. And he said something to the fact, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Orlando Cepeda said, but it's not yours to keep. It's for you to pass along to the next generation. So when you get up there, you just remember that as much as you love this industry there, young fella Evan Giddings, pay it forward to the next up-and-comer, to the next kid out there who might be in grammar school. It's going to be the next Evan Giddings. Always be looking for the generation behind you. That's how we pass this torch and keep this machine going.
Well, I think it's advice that spans across all industries, because the question was about what he was talking about. And I knew about Dusty Baker's past. Obviously, he's a manager, but the more that he talked about his playing days and his younger years, it just had me thinking, like, this guy has seen so much greatness that I was curious if he, kind of sensed a common thread throughout the generations of baseball or just sports that he's had a chance to see in circles that we will never get to experience. And, he was just like, the fact that all these great players from Cepeda to Aaron to Bonds, Bobby Bonds, Barry Bonds, Willie Mays, and even into the guys now that he's had a chance to manage, for example, someone like Justin Verlander, who's on the San Francisco Giants, all of those guys have paid it forward in some way or another. So it's excellent advice, and it comes from a dude that had, like, people like that have every reason to blow you off or not give you the time of day. And not to say that they'd be right in doing so, but you'd kind of get it, right? Like, Dusty Baker's been in baseball for 45 years. He's a legend. He's won a World Series. He could just basically, say, all right, kid, like, get out of here. And he didn't do that. In fact, nobody did that last night.
All right, let's get into the Golden State Warriors. This is Warriors This Week. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone. And what a week it was. Of course, the first 4 games with one Jimmy Butler. And the Golden State Warriors, first of all, looked like a new team. They fared well on that road trip despite the hiccup against Dallas. They end things on a positive note with that big win against Houston. But where are we at with Jimmy Butler? And he obviously has had a positive impact on this team. I think the big question going forward is just, is it sustainable? There's a couple of questions I have when it comes to Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. Is you got to let this breathe. I think it's only going to get better as he acclimates more to his new team. It's Steph Curry, believe it or not, and it's Jonathan Kuminga. That's sort of the unknown factor. And how, when he comes back, how does he assimilate with Jimmy Butler? How do those two get along? I think it's only going to be a good thing. I don't worry about these things as much as others, I think, because a lot of people have a tendency to look at these things on paper and just like, well, this isn't going to work. They both play the same position and they both want to do the same thing. It's a wash. Move on. Look, they said the same thing with, Luka and Kyrie Irving, and they're saying the same thing about Luka and now LeBron. Look, good players know how to make room for one another. It'll work, but we just need to see it, and I think it may take a little while. But where are you at with Jimmy Butler after seeing him after a couple of games?
Well, they're obviously better, and I think the most important part, because you and I were both skeptical of the deal, I would say more cautiously optimistic, like the idea, again, of getting older as a team that's already old. I guess I wasn't as interested in that, but I remember a conversation we had back in the summer where we were tossing around, like the Paul Georges, the Markkanens, it might have been Durant, and I felt like Jimmy Butler was the most easily acquirable star that they could get, and I'm a big fan of his game. To me, he's somebody that now turns the Warriors into a team of interest. And that was something they could not boast before. The season was dead in the water. It was going nowhere. Maybe there was a chance they could sneak into the play-in, maybe catch a team. But the season was not going to be anything to write home about. Now, you can envision this team legitimately making the playoffs. And I think that's the goal, right? They didn't make the postseason last year. This year, the goal is to make the postseason and see how far you can take this thing, to gauge where you're at before you have, essentially a year and a half left of this big three you've put together. So I think the Warriors are now a team that everyone needs to be watching, that the entire league needs to be watching, because Steph is already box office himself, and now he's on an island with another player that legitimately has star power. And I think we've learned very quickly just how much good basketball Jimmy Butler has left in his body.
Yeah, it's not about Jimmy Butler in the here and now. And I know that I wasn't a fan of the trade, but it wasn't about Jimmy Butler and what it is that he can do, because I knew you were going to get your best version of Jimmy. And this isn't a surprise to me, because if you take care of Jimmy Butler's contract, which is what they did, Jimmy Butler's going to come and play ball for you, which is what he's going to keep his nose clean. The question I have, and we can worry about this when we get to it, it's just about longevity, is that when we get into next year and you have a bunch of guys, Steph then at 37 and a bunch of guys in their mid-30s that are your best basketball players, and then the other players who are just still green and a little wet behind the ears, I just don't know how that dynamic is going to work and spending that much money on Jimmy Butler. But that's a conversation for next year.
Well, I also think there's concern with, the last 27 games. Like, you got to keep all these guys healthy, Curry, Draymond, and Jimmy, for not just the 27 games, but into the postseason, making sure that they're fresh. And not a concern from the standpoint of it can't happen, but, it isn't just longevity as far as next season, but when you got older bodies, you're more susceptible to injury.
Yeah, the questions I have with this basketball team is it starts with Steph. And Steph is still their best player. But I think it should be clear to everybody that Steph can no longer be that guy, and he hasn't been for a while, but you would see it more frequently where he would give you the 35 points, or he would erupt as he did on that road trip with 24 in the fourth quarter and be this amazing Steph. That's becoming few and far between. That's becoming more the exception now than the norm. Yeah. Now, Jimmy Butler is going to help with that, but is Jimmy Butler enough? And the addition of Jonathan Kuminga, how does that work out? I think it's only going to benefit the Golden State Warriors, but we have to see how that all comes together. But just starting there with Steph, I'm curious how you feel watching Steph Curry, because it's been, I was reading this. So in 2016, when he was the MVP, he had 14 games over 40 points. A couple of years ago in 2022, when they won the NBA championship, he had, I believe, 7 games over 40 points. This year, he has 0. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that back in the day in 2016, you had to worry about other people not named Steph on the Golden State Warriors. Right now, it's about as one-dimensional as it gets in the NBA, is that everybody's blitzing Steph. So that has a large reason, and it's a lot to do with why some of his stats and those eye-popping numbers have declined a bit. But he's just obvious, and Steph will be the first to admit it. I can't do that as frequently as I once did. And so with that, clearly, I think to everybody that watches Warrior games, it's not that Steph's in a cold streak or Steph isn't feeling it tonight. It's just the new Steph that we have to get used to. Still very, very good. He just can't be that guy on a nightly basis. And so with those performances becoming more infrequent, what is it that we expect of Jimmy Butler? Or is it more of a concern now that clearly Steph has taken a step backwards, and how does Jimmy work into that whole equation?
And Steph is going to have games like he did against Dallas, and he's going to have games like he did against the Lakers, but those games ideally are less frequent when you have Jimmy Butler, and you're not as reliant upon those games. Like, I agree with you. I think one of the big reasons that they went 3-1 is because Steph had 3 good games and he had 1 bad game. But it was like he was having 2 good games and 2 bad games before Jimmy got there. So if you're telling me you get 3 good games from Steph a week out of 4, those are odds that I'm taking every single time. And you're right, he's their best player, but there's going to be some nights where I think Jimmy Butler can also be the best player on the floor and lead you to a win. I just don't think he's he's quite there yet. I think you can tell that he's getting it, whether it's the read and react, how he works with the second unit, playing alongside Steph and Draymond. It's an adjustment, but you've already seen him take steps down the stretch of the Houston game helping out. I know that Dallas didn't go their way, but that was another clutch game, the first one, and I think you could see Jimmy Butler struggling a bit, but the next time they're in that spot, he'll be able to play better. Like, Jimmy's a guy that I am not concerned about figuring out his place in this team, and what I believe is important about his introduction with Curry is you now have a hierarchy, like a legitimate, top two guys that makes everybody else's role more clear. Like we were talking about Dusty Baker earlier, and to take it to baseball, it's so much different when you have an established two-hole hitter or, your best hitter in the line because that's where they hit now. When you don't know who's hitting two, then you also don't really know who should be batting leadoff. You don't know who should hit behind him. The 4 spot is up in the air. 5. There's a domino effect from not having a number 1 and more importantly, a clear-cut number 2, which the Warriors did not. It means like a team Dallas, you might need Buddy Hield to score a lot of points when he shouldn't. Before the trade deadline, you needed Jonathan Kuminga to be your number 2 scorer every single night when sometimes he couldn't. And it puts more pressure on Steph to be great every single night. So the fact that the Warriors are a team now that isn't as reliant on three-point shooting and I would say playing mistake-free basketball, there's more of a margin for error with Jimmy Butler on this team. And there's also more of a margin for error with someone like Steph Curry.
You mentioned Buddy Hield. I'm so glad the light went on for Steve Kerr.
Shivano
needs to sit. I'm glad Steve was finally like, enough.
He was
as they say in Hawaii, enough.
Plus 13 against Houston.
It's just the game before.
You don't like the gravity?
Well, Dallas was just one of the worst performances I've seen by a two-guard in a Warrior uniform in a long, long time. The thing about him, he just seems like one of the nicest guys, man.
I think he is.
He comes across as one of the most affable people that you could play with. But he's been dead weight. And that starting lineup where they insert, I think it's Podziemski's position again to lose.
We've
been down this road before.
We'll see.
Yeah. So it's Podziemski. And I don't think it's by accident that you're seeing Podziemski as well as Moses Moody flourish with Jimmy Butler. Now, both of those guys, let's keep in mind, their confidence clearly was headed in the right direction prior to the arrival of Jimmy Butler, especially Podziemski. He eradicated all those difficulties he was struggling with early on in the season, and he was a much more confident basketball player and has been over the last month. But when you think about Podziemski and Moody, they fit perfect with someone like that of Jimmy Butler, because how is it that Podziemski is getting run with the Golden State Warriors? Well, I'll tell you, it's all guile, man. It's about knee burns, and it's about hustle, and it's about the right basketball play. Yeah, he can shoot it, and he has that little awkward move to the basket, and he decelerates in the lane, and he can get his, but it's not about necessarily his physical skills as far as scoring the ball. It's all the other things he does, and that's sort of what Jimmy Butler is. And it's interesting to see Podziemski flourish now with Butler because they're cut out of the same mode. And the same can be said about Moody. Moody, yeah, he can line up a 3 from time to time, but really he's all about hustle plays. And that gets back to Jonathan Kuminga. Because I think the identity, the one thing we've talked about with this team, Ev, is what's the identity? They got one now with Jimmy Butler. I know who the hell they are. You got an inside-out game, and now you've got an identity with Jimmy Butler. You'll always have that no matter where Butler is. Does Jonathan Kuminga fit that mode of what it is that we're seeing? Because Butler's all about energy. He's all about loose balls. He's all about bringing it. And that's what Podziemski and Moody, again, not by accident, why I think they're flourishing with the new addition. But Jonathan Kuminga isn't necessarily that guy, at least at this stage of his career. How does he factor in with Jimmy Butler going forward? I know he's excited to have Jimmy, and I know Jimmy's shown signs of taking the young fella under the wing and giving him the master's class on this is how you play basketball. I'm just curious what this is going to look like when he returns.
I'm more excited to see if Jonathan Kuminga can be the on-ball defender that they right now don't have. I mean, with all due respect to Pods, with all due respect to even Jimmy, your starting lineup right now is devoid of someone that can stay in front of somebody. Like, that's what you saw against Dallas. And I realize that Buddy Hield was not very good. Nobody could guard Kyrie Irving. Like, nobody could guard him. Jimmy Butler couldn't guard Brandon Williams, who's a player that I was not aware was in the NBA before Wednesday. So that's what they're missing. And that's what Kuminga, to me, that's what we're going to find out if he can do. Will he fit? It's going to take some time. There's no doubt about that. And offensively, I think they're going to be a bit constrained. I think they already are constrained. Like, they don't have shooting. I think that's why Buddy's been in the starting lineup for as long as he has, because they don't have many guys that can hit threes or at least be a threat to hit a three. And they're still going to run into problems. But it's funny, like you mentioned Butler helping some of the younger players. I think it's because someone like Podziemski, he's not yet really a true point. Like, he's more of a 2. Butler is a point forward. Like, he's an extra ball handler and a guy, more importantly, that takes care of the basketball that they did not have before. Andrew Wiggins is undoubtedly a better defender than Butler is at this stage in his career, at least in my opinion. He's not a guy that's going to make a play for someone else. And Moody and Podziemski are guys, and most young players are, they need someone else to make plays for them. And so when you have Curry, along with Butler, along with even Draymond, you have 3 different guys on the floor that can make a play for others. And that's why I think those 2 players fit into that lineup, because they're not at yet the stage in their career where they can do that. So I think Kuminga is going to fall into that young player. You know, he's going to need the ball in his hands. I think the Warriors are going to need him to take them to the next level. And in many ways, whatever Kuminga is when he comes back is going to dictate how far they can go. But it's because now they have that established structure of star power. And I just think Butler makes it so much easier for everybody else offensively.
Well, you know, you mentioned all on-the-ball defenders, point of attack defense. This is the reason why I have an issue with the Jimmy Butler trade. And I like Butler for now. And again, he's going to be amazing as long as you paid him. But the reason why I'm not in on older players is, think about that. It's really come in vogue over the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, where the Warriors suddenly are now not a good on-the-ball defensive team. They're not good point-of-attack defense. You know what that's saying, in other words? They're old. Because when you're old, you cannot get out on an island and stay in front of a guy. Right? Draymond Green is still a top defender, but he's much better in rotating defense. That block he had on Max Christie was vintage Draymond Green. Help defense around the rim. If he's, the last defender between you and a layup and it's a close game, you ain't getting it. I'll bet on Draymond 10 out of 10 times. But if you stick him out on the perimeter and say, go watch Max Christie from 25 feet away, 85% of the time, Christie's taking him right to the rack. And the same with Jimmy Butler. I saw him get beat baseline. Yeah. That's what happens with an older team. Every time I hear that they're not a good point of attack or they're not good ball defenders, that's, in other words, that's masking you're now old. And that's the primary concern I've always had going forward. And now with the addition of Jimmy Butler, it gets even worse.
But I agree with you. That was my biggest concern also. But if Kuminga can be that guy, and I don't think that he's all of a sudden going to transform into an all-NBA or all-defensive player, but if he can be adequate, the one thing they did add with Butler, they added a really good help defender. And now if you look at their starting lineup, I think Steph's defense is a bit underrated. Podziemski, I don't think, is a great on-ball defender, but he's a heady help defender. Draymond's an elite help defender, like you mentioned. Butler is a very good help defender. And then, you figure out what to do with your center. You now have like 3 or 4 guys that are heady enough off the ball. So if you can have one player that you can deploy that can stop the initial drive, well, then I think he actually might be the piece that completes the puzzle defensively. So again, there are things that they're going to have to work through, but I can see Kuminga. I don't know if it's the last piece, but he's someone that can kind of make the rest of the picture look clear, if you get what I'm saying. Like, that's why I think that Wiggins, his presence or his void is going to be felt, but it just means that Kuminga's got a bigger job to do. And look, he's in line to make a lot of money this summer. All reports are that they're going to pay him. The question is how much and for how long. And if he's someone that can be the two-way player that, again, they kind of envisioned, I think, when they drafted him, well, then he's going to earn himself a lot of money, but he's got roughly 27 or probably 25 games whenever he decides to, whenever he gets cleared to return. That the last 25 games are going to tell us how much he's worth.
I think it's a scary proposition that if the biggest thing we're waiting for with the return of Jonathan Kuminga is his defense.
Well, he's also going to help you offensively.
Yeah,
he should help you offensively.
Offensively is really where they need those young legs, and they need another scorer not named Steph, not named Jimmy Butler.
I mean, they just need young players.
Yeah.
They need to get younger, and they chose not to do that at the deadline. So,
but I think he's definitely going to help. It's just going to be curious to see, does he buy in defensively? And it's not on the ball. It's just more about, the rotational, just being very smart and aware, which sometimes he has a tendency to get his head in the clouds. But, hey, listen, it's all good right now because the Warriors, we'll talk about the construction to the West. Are you afraid of OKC? Are you afraid of Memphis and Houston, the teams that right now sit atop the Western Conference? We discussed that and much more. And, of course, we'll go back and forth as to what happened last night at the cigar bar with my man Evan Giddings in one of the remotes of the decade. I enjoyed every minute of it. We'll continue here. Warriors this week. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone. Just getting started. Back with more after this.
Hey, Bay Area. It's Joe Shasky. And let me tell you about UA Local 38.
To win a digital copy, enter our contest online at 957thegame.com. Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, 5 o'clock out here on the West Coast, it'll be the NBA All-Star Game as it returns to San Francisco. Evan Giddings and Dan Avone as we welcome you into Warriors this week. And, of course, all the pregame festivities continue, the parties as well as some of the games. Last night, as I talked about, they had the Rising Stars winners. And it's going to be Chris Mullin's team with Stephon Castle, Trace Jackson-Davis. Some good boys in that basketball team. And I really want to get into the Rising Stars in this year's the newly formatted NBA All-Star Game. I'm all in. I am so all in.
Now, why, Dan Devone, are you all in on the NBA All-Star Game?
Because I think there's going to be renewed energy, and it all starts with the kids. The kids. Now, listen, I say I'm all in right now. I have to see how this plays out. I like theoretically what it is that they're trying to do. But these kids don't know that it's a show. Like, this might be the biggest game they'll ever play in. They may never get to a stage like this, whether it be an NBA All-Star Game and or into the postseason. This could be it for them. And they got an opportunity to make a name for themselves in front of the world. And so I think you're going to see Stephon Castle dunk on somebody when he's not supposed to. I think you might see Trace Jackson-Davis take a charge and have somebody look up at him and go, "Look, what the hell are you doing here? It's the All-Star Game." They could change the entire outlook of what has been the biggest concern over the last couple of years. These guys don't give a rip and are launching, threes from half court and alley-oops off the glass.
You familiar with the Dream Team practice with the college players in 1992?
It's a documentary.
Yes. I think there's actually, and there might be one that's coming out pretty soon, about those. There were two practices, but the one that was behind closed doors that the media was not privy to was the one where the college kids won.
Bobby Hurley went to work.
Him, Grant Hill, a lot
Christian
of other young
Laettner.
studs. Well, Laettner was on the Dream Team.
Oh, that's right.
But you remember what happened to practice after? The Dream Team crushed the college kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see something similar on Sunday.
In the second half, you will.
Yes. That's why I'm excited, because if there's anyone that can get these old farts to play some basketball in an exhibition that is what now is become known as the All-Star Game, it's going to be those kids that you're talking about. It's going to be the Castles. It's going to be the Pajemskis, the TJDs. Shoot. The Pat Spencers. By the way, Pat Spencer was on the G League squad.
Yes.
They played well. Reed Shepherd should be embarrassed. You cannot be a part of a G League team if you are the number 3 overall pick. And he was a representative like the Rio Valley Grand Vipers. Reed Shepherd's an NBA player. That guy was playing against the Warriors. Like, you can't be on the G League team. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But I do think that those young players are going to
same can be said for Mac McClung.
Mac McClung's played 5 minutes in the NBA this season.
I know, but if you're going to win the NBA slam dunk contest, you got to be on a damn team. And it's his to lose. Once again, I think he walks away with the hardware again. But my man,
yeah, I mean,
get into the association.
Going up against Matas Bucelis. Castle's in it too, which should be fun, I guess. And then Andre Jackson Jr. You know what actually is the most damning part about the dunk contest? There's only 4 participants. You could only get 4 people to participate in the dunk contest. People were champing at the bit not even 5 years ago to get in this thing. There used to be 6, 8 representatives, and now we can only get 4. But I think your point stands. The young guys are going to play hard on All-Star Weekend, and I'm excited because I think it's going to get those old guys to kind of kick the dust off.
Yeah, I think the minute that one of the kids picks, say, I don't know, Dame Lillard's pocket or is picking up Kevin Durant at 3/4 court, and they're like, the All-Stars get down a little bit, it's going to change the entire complexion. If they wax them and curb stomp the kids and the Rising Stars in the last 2 quarters of that game, that's fine. That means that they'll be playing the sort of basketball that everybody's paid to come see. Anything other than what it is that we've witnessed over the last couple of years. You mentioned Stephon Castle is becoming, speaking of rising stars, that is an appropriate term for this young man because that's exactly what he is, becoming out there in San Antonio. Why the hell? I need someone to explain this to me, so of course I turn to the young man, Evan Giddings. Why is he not starting? And do I have to watch Chris Paul rolled out there? You know what I think it is? Because you and I have this little bet about San Antonio because I like the Spurs.
Yes, you do.
I think that they're quietly tanking. I think the reason they're rolling Chris Paul out there is that they're quietly doing the tank job.
Perhaps.
What other explanation could there be to put out a 54-year-old man with my man Wemby?
Easy. He's only 39. I think it's because Castle's still a rookie. And I also think the Fox factor is interesting to me. Like, I don't know whether they think that Fox is more of a 1 or a 2, but Paul's kind of the point guard. By the way, Castle still plays a lot. Like, he still plays 30 minutes a game. He's kind of getting Kuminga right now where, he's a starting caliber player, but he's just going to come off the bench and get a lot of tick. I don't know. I mean, he's probably their best young player, not named Wembanyama. Vassell's good too. I'm not sure. I don't buy it that they're tanking, but I think that you probably look at that squad, and this is one of the reasons why our bet I feel good about, and I did before all this happened. They're still like a year away. Like they kind of remind me of the Houston Rockets last season where, you remember the Rockets, they made like a run, almost got the Warriors, won like 10 in a row, just fell out of the postseason, and now you can legitimately see why they've made that next step. That's what the Spurs kind of feel like this season into next season. So I don't know if it's that they don't want to unleash Stephon Castle, but I think they know they got some time to work with, and they're just kind of taking baby steps with him.
So the San Antonio...
And Chris Paul's going to be gone soon anyways.
Yeah, but there's no reason why he should start in front of Fox and Stephon Castle. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Great veteran leader, Dan.
Yeah, like that team should be all about youth and going downhill with one of the fastest from point-to-point guards that the NBA has seen in a long time, that being De'Aaron Fox. Instead, they get this methodical, slow plotting, let's do pick and roll because it's 1985.
Well, the way you talk about them, it sounds like they're like a 60-win team. I mean, the Spurs of old.
They misuse. I love Wembanyama, and I know this has been talked about, but you look at his shot chart, it's just like that of Steph's. Like, he's really shooting this many shots from this distance from behind. I know you can shoot a 3, and he's upwards to like 37%. He hasn't shot it well of late, but come on, man. At 7'3", you got to get your ass down there.
It's so interesting the kind of expectation you have for older and younger players. Like, I know you obviously love the pups more than the old geezers, but the thing is, it's like Wembanyama is what, 20? He can't even drink yet. He's going to get into the post at some point. He's got to eat a sandwich. I mean, the guy just broke the 200-pound barrier. He can't bang with the big boys right now. Let him hang out there, figure out the three-point shot, work his way in, and he's going to be an all-timer.
But I think you got to well, it's not even gradual. There is absolutely no presence. They don't run any sets with him down on the block.
They don't run anything. Well, Chris Paul runs something. Maybe that's why he's on the floor.
And they don't. And he doesn't want, I just don't want him to see him go down the path of Kristaps Porzingis, where it's almost too late. And Kristaps is still a good basketball player, but I think he could have been a lot better. And obviously the injuries played a factor.
NBA champion.
But I think that Porzingis didn't acclimate or didn't recognize, wow, I could be a factor if I learn how to play within 16 feet. If I could be Jimmy Butler, except I'm like a foot taller. The light went on so late in his career. And I think that, for a guy like that, Wembanyama with his skill set, just, my man, go to, a big man's camp. Go to the George Mikan big man's camp and just learn a jump hook.
George Mikan's big man camp.
I made that
from the
up.
Minneapolis Lakers. All right, Devone, is that who you're looking forward to the most on Sunday in the All-Star game, watching Victor Wembanyama? Or is it Steph? Is it Durant? Is it LeBron? Who is it?
Well, I like Tyler Hero because it's new. Seeing him crack the starting lineup.
So weird.
Oh, I mean, come on. Tyler Hero's now a starter out there in the East. Some of these guys, I like the smaller guys, the Jalen Brunson. I mean, look, the new faces.
Yeah.
Like Cade Cunningham. What's Cade Cunningham going to be like playing Who watches Detroit basketball?
He's going to get shots up is what he's going to do. Because if you watch Detroit basketball, you know that guy is not afraid to take 15 shots in a single quarter.
My point is, I want to see some of the new faces, the Tyler Heroes and the Kate Cunninghams, both of which are starters. And how about LaMelo Ball? Not even getting an invitation. The leading vote getter. What does that tell us?
Yeah, that's a little messed up. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Trae Young didn't make it until he was an injury replacement. People don't like the chuckers, Dan.
They really don't.
They don't like the chuckers.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I think that, believe it or not, because this new ownership out there in Charlotte, they didn't draft this kid. So when you talk about big players that could get moved over the offseason and starting anew, I know it's remote, but just keep an eye on LaMelo and his one-footed threes. He'll be right up there with Zion.
Now, there will be a ball at All-Star Weekend. LiAngelo's performing.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. I think he's performing. I don't know if it's pregame or halftime. I think he's performing on Sunday. Wow. So you will see the balls in the building.
See, that's like something that's not going to translate well. Does LiAngelo translate well to a live performance?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he performed before the Lions and Commanders divisional round game. I don't know. He had Ford Field rocking. Maybe he'll have Chase Center bumping.
Is there a guy that you're looking forward to seeing up close and personal, or?
Well, outside of Steph, I mean, obviously it's his weekend, it's his game, it's his house. So outside of Curry, because I think he's going to try and put on a show. When Lillard comes to Oakland, that's always something that interests me. He's pretty aggressive. He loves to show out for the home crowd, even though he's on the other side of the bridge. I think if there's a player that I'm most interested in watching, it actually would be Cade Cunningham, because he's a legitimate one, like a budding number one, a budding superstar, I think. And the Pistons don't get a lot of good pub, but they've had a really good season for where the expectation was.
They're going to the playoffs
off of last year. Well, they're in it right now. Dude, they were like one of the historically worst teams in basketball last year. And Cade was in and out, but I think this season he's really taking the next step. So from his team, like the young team, I think that's Kenny Smith's team. I think he's the kind of guy that I could see leading that squad to, I don't know, the semis or finals, whatever they're calling it in this format.
What do you think of the new format? I see anything to me that involves a tournament, I think there's just innately there's buy-in by the players.
I think, and this is also one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to watching Cade. To me, if there's anybody that's going to save the All-Star game and turn it back into a game, which it has not been for what feels like half a decade, if not longer, it's got to be one of the young guys. It's got to be a young player that says, come here, Kevin Durant, come here, LeBron James, and get this work. There's got to be some young guy that challenges the older generation so that we have a legitimate reason to believe that this game is going to turn into something different. Because right now, I think the older players have played in so many of these games that it's like they don't really care at this point. They're just out there getting cardio in, trying to have some fun with their friends and not get hurt. It's going to take a young player and one of maybe the new All-Stars to really step up and try and turn this thing back into what it should be, which is competition among the league's best.
You know what it's become for the NBA All-Stars? It's a business trip. It's a business trip. You need to go out there. Their agent lines up the itinerary. And one of their assistants, one of their minions says, okay, it's not an All-Star game. This is a business trip. You got to go here, shake some hands. One of your sponsors needs you to show up on Friday. On Saturday, you've got to do this event. And by the way, on Sunday, there's a basketball game. Yeah, this has become something where guys just go to do what it is that they have to do to continue to procure those relationships that they have with their sponsors. And so I think this year it could potentially turn back into being a basketball game where they give a rip. And you know who could change that? Your buddy. Zach Edey.
Oh.
Zach Edey.
Okay.
No, Zach Edey is gonna do something inappropriate. Whether it's to Dame Lillard or whether it's to Kevin Durant or LeBron James or Jalen Brunson, where they're going to be like, bro, what are you doing? That's a hard foul. And there might be, he's the one guy who could ratchet up the intensity. I'm putting my faith on Big Maple.
Big Maple. You do know that Draymond's not playing in the All-Star game, right?
Even without Draymond, there'll be a dust-up.
Yeah, or Shea Gilgeous. I think that's also that's the real Maple you gotta keep an eye on, because that guy is unbelievable. And I think is he on Chuck's team? I think he might be on Chuck's team. But he can make the case to be the best player in this game or during the weekend. But I also think too, it's like when I'm watching the All-Star game, and I'll be in the building, is who is playing the game within the game? Like, who is trying to go at a particular player, the relationships? You're talking about the business trip, and I do have a bone to pick with Jared McCain in a little bit, who didn't even play, Sixers rookie. But
well, he's hurt.
Yes, but he had a chance to help me out last night getting into a party.
Oh.
Didn't do it.
Oh, well, screw him.
Yeah, I'm out on him. But I think that who are the guys that are playing the game within the game? Are they going at teammates? Are they going at rivals in their conference? That kind of stuff to me is really the only part about the All-Star game that's been kind of interesting, and why they're switching up the formats to try and get those little mini rivalries renewed. Because otherwise, Dan, I'm just not really sure what there is to play for at this point, because no one cares about getting $120,000 when you're making the kind of money that these guys make.
Well, you know who cares?
The rising stars.
Damn right.
Or the young guys.
The kids.
The Stephon Castles.
125 skahoots to them? I mean, I really do think it's on their shoulders to change the entire complexion of this thing. The only thing I'm concerned about is, do they get influenced by the cool kids? Do they we shouldn't be doing that, man. The cool kids aren't, why are we taking this so serious? We got to be like LeBron. We got to be like, Dame, and we got to be like Kyrie Irving. What do we do? Come on, man. Let's not work that hard. We want to be accepted rather than win $120K.
Well, that's why you're going to need an Anthony Edwards or a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander or one of these budding superstars to step up and just say, screw you guys. You guys, you oafs, you lollygag up and down. You lollygag. Shout out Bull Durham. Up and down this court for 40 minutes or however long you make it out there. This weekend is about showing people the best we have in the game, and not just being in your jersey and literally being mannequins that are getting reps in. It's the All-Star practice is taking place in Oakland in about 1 hour. I need that to not be what the actual game looks like 24 and a half hours from now, because the All-Star practice might be the best part of All-Star weekend, and a lot of people aren't going to get to see it or get to go.
Can you make any or can you explain to me why it is that Steph Curry, of all All-Star games, the return to San Francisco is not taking part in the three-point shooting contest this evening?
Is gutless?
Wow.
No, I'm just playing.
Hello.
I actually think it's.
By the way, a Manhattan is made with rye whiskey.
Yeah, I found that out earlier. Still a little woozy. At least I was an hour ago. The thing about
it's a good call, by the way. Manhattan's done well as an awesome drink, especially this time of the year. It's sort of like comfort food, comfort drinking. Manhattan.
I found it's kind of tough to get a good one though.
It is. It's very nuanced.
Yeah, there's
anybody can pour a beer. Manhattan, hard to do.
Especially at least around this area for some reason. The thing about Steph in the 3-point contest, I don't know why he's not doing it. I think there has to be something in store tonight. And I don't know if it's a one-on-one matchup. Last year it was against Ionescu. That was the best part of All-Star Weekend last year. And I know they wanted to evolve it
with Caitlin
Clark, and then I think Steph was going to be paired with Clay. That would be my guess. Come back to Chase Center, Splash Brothers, Splash Sisters. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, and Caitlin bowed out, and you knew Clay wasn't going to do it. He's on his boat somewhere. He had nothing to do with it.
I think he might have been coerced.
I think Caitlin Clark, she declined. And you know why I think she did?
Well, I think she said it, right?
What'd she say?
She said she wanted her first 3-point competition to be in the WNBA All-Star game, which is in Indianapolis next year.
But I think, the real reason is she doesn't want to hear it, man. She doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't. She's been dealing with this for going on 3 years now. She doesn't want to come here and saying, why are you here? There are better three-point shooters in the WNBA. You weren't even in the top 10. We're so tired of Caitlin Clark privilege. She knows. She's smart. She's like, you know what? I don't need this in my life right now. I don't think she wants to deal with it. I don't think she wants to deal with the blowback because that blowback is real in her world.
Blowback from what? From losing or from winning?
No,
or just competing?
No, it's just what people perceive as the privilege that Caitlin Clark receives. And the fact that she's invited to be in a three-point shooting contest when she's not the best three-point shooter in the WNBA.
Well, Ionescu isn't either.
I know, but I think it gets fueled more with Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark, that's sort of what it is that she's been dealing with since she's come into the league, is a lot of that. Sort of this, Caitlin Clark has the silver spoon in her mouth and everybody else just sort of get out of the way. And she just like, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. Like, I know I'm not the best three-point shooter. I know you're going to come at me, so I'm just going to blow it off.
I think that Caitlin Clark has an understanding of, shout out Steph Curry, the gravity that she possesses. Like, she's a star. And the fact that she's not doing this competition and it's kind of falling apart, I think just indicates how big of a Jenga piece she is in the tower of basketball entertainment. If she's here today, hypothetically at Chase Center, there's going to be a lot more eyes on that game or that three-point competition than there'd be otherwise. And it's not just because of Steph. When you pair, I think, the two best basketball entertainers that we have in the men's game and the women's game, it would take it into a completely different stratosphere. And the fact they can't do that might be the reason that Steph doesn't want to run it back. But that had the potential to be the greatest spectacle, I think, in recent NBA All-Star weekends. A three-point competition involving Steph Curry and Caitlin Clark, whether you believe that Caitlin is the best three-point shooter or deserves it or not, that's something that everyone, I think, can get behind. And the fact that she's not doing it, it lessens the value of the product. It lessens Saturday night and the three-point competition, whether Curry shows up and does something that's unexpected or not. So I think she understands how big of a star she is, and she has respect for her sport, which we in turn have to do as well. So it sucks that she's not doing it, but I think it's because she gets it. Like, she gets how big of a deal she is.
The response, or what it is that the Warriors, their PR team, put out was sort of curious. They basically said, if I read this correctly, it's like, we can't duplicate what it is that we did last year, so we're not doing it. Like, their response in defending why they're not doing it was almost like, well, it was so good last year, we don't think that we can duplicate its popularity this year.
Well, and I'll tell you why on the other side that's BS, because the NBA's got a bigger problem than that. And I think the fact that they are unwilling to try and run it back, whether it's because the players don't want to participate or they don't want to do the same thing, that indicates a larger issue to me that I'll explain on the other side.
All right, we'll do that and much more. We'll also get back to the Golden State Warriors. We take a brief respite, as everybody does, during the All-Star break. But it's very promising when you think about the addition of Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors trying to walk down those teams in front of them. Do they get into the playoffs, first of all? And then could they be a 6 seed and avoid the play-in altogether? We discuss with Evan Giddings and Dan Avone. Warriors This Week continues after this quick timeout.
Safety on the roads and freeways starts at Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Your
Credit Union.
The Rockets coming out to play.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Who's that?
The Rockets coming out to play.
Draymond Green.
Oh,
Your boy Day Day. Come on,
Evan
Dan.
Giddings and Dan Avone. I saw somebody who went off. Who was it? Was it Kevin O'Connor? No. Somebody that I listen to or I read that really firmly believes they were doing one of those silly, because this time of the year, by the way, welcome back to Warriors This Week. It's Evan Giddings, Dan Avone. I think I just said that. This time of the year, it's just slow. If you cover basketball, you're trying to fill time, and these guys got to do their daily, if not doing multiple podcasts a day. That's how they make their money with their sponsors. But so they do a lot of these predictions in the second half of the season. And some of these are bold predictions. One of which is that the honeymoon between Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler is going to come to an end. And then we're going to see a public sort of feud between those two, much like that of Draymond Green and Kevin Durant in Los Angeles.
No chance. No chance. I vehemently disagree with whichever podcaster you're referring to. I don't know his name. I don't know who he's from. I completely disagree. And the reason is, with all due respect to Kevin Durant, KD's kind of a poodle. Draymond Green doesn't have a problem with people that he respects. He has a problem with people that he senses fear in. He's talked about this. People have explained this about him. If he senses someone's on the court with him that isn't bought in, that doesn't have his respect, I don't care if he's on the same team as him or a different team, he's going to attack them verbally, potentially physically. Jimmy Butler's not that guy. And Jimmy Butler's also someone that's not afraid to go face-to-face with Draymond Green. Like, Draymond, you notice all the guys that he picks on? They're all either foreign players, young guys, people he believes are soft. Does Jimmy Butler strike you as someone that's soft? I don't think so.
But Kevin Durant didn't strike me as soft.
Kevin Durant's a great player. He's a borderline top 10 player ever. He's soft.
I think the issue potentially, and I'm with you, I don't necessarily subscribe to this, but at some point, unless the Warriors continue to, unless they only lose, 3 or 4 games from here on out, at some point in this, aside from OKC and maybe Cleveland, everybody has to deal with this, and that is there's going to be a rash of losses. You'll go through the battle of attrition that is the NBA in the second half of the season and the ebb and flow. And I think that with the new construct of this team, they can mitigate the losses, but there's probably going to be a rough patch of games where maybe you're on the road, maybe you're playing 3 and 4 nights, and you lose a little bit. Right now, we're taking the pulse of the Golden State Warriors in the midst of winning, in the midst of a feel-good with Jimmy Butler. At some point, it's almost inevitable that you're going to lose a few games. That's the only potential that there could be flare-ups. And I think after that, you'll get a better gauge as to the relationship between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think the relationship between Butler and the Warriors is something I monitor more than Butler and Green. I don't think Jimmy's really had much of an issue in his time with players, more so than he has with the front office. I think you mentioned it off the top, and I think you're absolutely correct. If his money's right, if he's taken care of, he'll play nice. In many ways, Jimmy Butler is a basketball mercenary, but you know exactly what you're going to get when he's happy. And right now, he's happy. Like, this is the honeymoon phase, and they're off to a 3-1 start. I thought that the Rockets win was big in light of the loss to Dallas, which is something that, hurts you in the head-to-head Western Conference standings, and you didn't want to fall below 500 going into the All-Star break. So that was a big win in Houston for them. And I think the fact that the vibes are good right now, they're showing that they can win games against teams they should beat. That's going to keep everybody happy as they prepare for the last 27 games of the season and try and make something of this year. Like, how much urgency do you think is on this season, Dan? Because I know that he's locked up for 2 more years after this, aligns with Curry and Draymond, but how much urgency do you think it now puts on the rest of this season for the Warriors.
Oh, there's urgency in every game and every season when you're 35. The clock's ticking. It may not be urgent for the younger players, but everything's urgent, which is why, when you said earlier, and I'm with you to a certain point, that this is sort of not a throwaway year, but I think you mentioned if they get into the playoffs and if they steal around, then they can sort of assess what it is that they need going forward over the offseason and then come back in full force next year. I don't think they look at it that way. I think that this is a championship or bust sort of mentality. And it sort of has to be if you only have, 2 more years of this? And so I think that the urgency, the minute you decided to get Jimmy Butler, that was the proverbial word. It's about urgent. It's about winning now. It's about the urgency of this basketball team putting together a major run. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I do think that is sort of the outlook of this basketball team going forward.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But I guess the reason why I don't want to look towards next year, but I also think that it's going to be really hard for the Warriors as currently constructed because for them to make a run to, say, the Western Conference Finals. Could they do it? Perhaps. Things could fall their way. There's a lot of young teams that are at the top of the West who lack experience winning multiple playoff series like the Warriors do, or the top players in the Warriors have. But if you're able to, let's say, win a round and you get to the second round, which I think would be a success for this team, to win a postseason series, probably as a lower seed, then it shows you how far you are away. Like, I think the Warriors, the remainder of this season and into the postseason should be about figuring out how far away you are from a championship. And I think they are drastically closer post-deadline with someone like Jimmy Butler than they were before, because I thought their percentage of winning was like 0, and now it's above 0. But if you can get into the playoffs and make some noise, or even conversely, if you figure out that you're not that close, well, then you can kind of pivot this offseason. And the one thing that Butler also does is give you a max slot. It gives you $60 more million to work with. There's room, to get up to the second apron. Like, I think they're all in on this big three, but it isn't as if they haven't built kind of like an emergency hatch if things go wrong. And I think the only way that things go wrong for this season and even next season would be due to injury. What would be due to their older players getting banged up because they're in their mid to late 30s.
When you talk about the playoffs, especially out in the West, it's almost like things are inverted now, right? Now you have teams like the Lakers and the Warriors in the bottom half, and then the upstarts, the OKCs, the Grizzlies, and the Nuggets. I think the West, we are in store for some serious surprises because I think it's going to be difficult, really difficult when you think about these young kids, because it's all about, earning your stripes in the NBA, because the playoffs are an entirely different beast. It's another game. It's another planet. And these guys just haven't been there and done that when you talk about OKC. Last year, they were the number one seed going into the postseason. And they won one playoff round, and that was against New Orleans. And that was it. Is that enough for them to get them over the threshold, over the hump? I think it's going to be, when you have the Lakers, now with Doncic and LeBron, lurking, along with the Warriors and Steph and Draymond and Jimmy Butler and all of that postseason experience, I don't want to be Houston. I don't want to be Memphis. I don't want to be OKC. You know what OKC's record is against Dallas? 2-12 over the last 2 years. 2-12. And guess who they're going to draw in the first round? If the season were to end today, the Dallas Mavericks. Now, obviously, a lot of that had to do with Luka, but Luka didn't play.
I was going to say there was a denominator there.
But Luka, listen, first of all, Dallas in the postseason is going to be difficult because Lively is going to be back. You're going to get, I don't know if it's going to work long term, and we can put the trade side by side for the next decade. And I think you never trade Luka Doncic. I'm on record as saying that. But you give me a healthy AD, Daniel Gafford, and Derek Lively. That's a front court I'll put up against anybody, and then you get Kyrie and whatever it is that you get out of Klay Thompson, you'll take it. But they own OKC. I'm just saying it is a different beast when you get to the postseason. And when you look at the landscape of the Western Conference right now, I think we're in store for a lot of surprises in those early rounds.
I don't think we are. I mean, there might be an upset. To me, the team you want to try and face is the Houston Rockets. The issue is that I'm not sure they're going to be good enough in the standings for you to play. Like, to me, the Warriors are...
Are you comfortable with OKC beating Dallas in a 7-game series? Both teams being full strength.
I am. Okay. Yeah. I think this is the year. I think this is the year for the Thunder to get over the hump, to make a run to the finals.
Usually takes more than a few.
Well, they got to the second round last year.
Yeah, that's one. But when you think about the experience, they don't have it. And so usually, I'm just saying, typically over the 75-year history of this league, it usually you've got to earn it. And it usually takes a couple of years. See Boston Celtics.
Well, you could also say see Golden State Warriors. They didn't have to wait their turn.
Well, the Warriors got bumped. Remember it was a while the Clippers used to own them when they had the Splash Brothers early on. San Antonio bounced them.
Yeah, they knocked them out in 7-game series in 2014.
Yeah, but it took a little while for them to. I get it. They were on a much faster track than most, but it took a little sort of you didn't just come out of nowhere and then suddenly win the thing.
Well, I'm not saying that the Thunder are going to win the championship. I still like Boston. I mean, I think they're the best team. They're the battle-tested team. But I mean, the team that I would kind of be worried about in the playoffs matching up with, if they get high enough, would be like the Nuggets.
Oh, they scare me.
Yeah, Denver's a team you do not want to play. And the reason why, looking at the Western Conference, I think the Butler trade was impactful from the standpoint of you now have talent on your roster, but when you're going against OKC or Denver, I don't think you have the best player in that series. Certainly not against the Nuggets. I mean, Jokic, I think, is the best player in the world. But SGA is unreal. And they haven't even had Chet Holmgren for the majority of the season, who's also a pretty damn good player. So you're right. They're not as experienced in the postseason. And I don't know if they're going to win a championship this year. But I think this is a team that you can almost pencil them into the Western Conference Finals.
Well, here's the question I have about OKC. And one of the reasons why Denver, and I'm with you now, gets really scary because they answered this. Who's the number 2 to the Joker? Jamal Murray. Hello, Jamal, who was not very good early on in the season. He was a little lumpy coming back from the injuries. He dropped that 55 the other night. Jamal Murray's back. And this looks like the team that won the title a year ago. Michael Porter Jr. is much better. And then there you throw Westbrook into that mix, and he's been nothing but good with his new team, that being the Denver Nuggets. Who's the number 2 to SGA out in OKC? You could say Chet, but really, is it Jalen Williams? I mean, who would you say is the number 2? Because you need at least 2 if SGA is off the floor not feeling it.
I mean, it's Jalen Williams. I think he's the guy who creates the most for them. But that's kind of that's kind of why I think they're so good. It's like they also, Dan, like they can lock you up.
Yeah.
Did you see what they did the other night? I think it was, who were they playing?
Memphis.
Did you see what they did to them?
It was ridiculous.
I mean, they were down 10 and immediately just flipped the game on its head in the fourth quarter. They went on like a 21-0 run. That's what is going to win in the playoffs, is defense. And so, yes, they may not have an established number 2 on offense. It may be SGA or bust. And I have my concerns about them becoming a bit siloed, but they get stops more than any team in basketball. And to me, that's something that does translate to the playoffs.
Well, as AI once said, and I'm talking about not the artificial intelligence, but the real AI, Allen Iverson, that sometimes your butt cheeks just get a little tight. And in the postseason, those big possessions, I just need to see it. I just need to see them do that before I have any level of confidence in any of those guys that you mentioned, including SGA and Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren. Look at the Ant-Man a year ago. Dominant in the regular season. He was the guy. The breakout party last year was Anthony Edwards. But in the postseason against the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals, big possessions, he went away. Big possessions for Jimmy Butler. Give me the ball. Clear aside. I got this. I've been here. I know how to do this. Draymond Green, I'll help you defensively. I don't care the situation. We know that we live for this. There's something to be said about the experience that the Warriors have, even the Clippers to a certain degree, the Los Angeles Lakers, that I'm not necessarily penciling in OKC or anybody until they prove it first to the Western Conference Finals and or getting out of the West.
Yeah, that's fair. But again, too, if you're the 1 seed, which they're going to be, they don't have to beat both Memphis and Denver. They don't have, they only have to beat one of those teams to get there. And this is why the Warriors' path, I think it has to be through the 7 seed, is because I would not want to play the Thunder in the first round. I don't know. I mean, maybe in a couple months we're talking about how this team is inexperienced and the Warriors got championship pedigree and they can go into OKC and beat that team. And they've played them well. There's no doubt about that. But, to your point earlier, Dan, and I think it's true. It's like, I do not want the Warriors against a young, fast, tenacious, supremely talented roster when it comes to a 7-game series. And unfortunately, there's kind of a lot of them in the West.
So currently, as we hit the All-Star break, the Golden State Warriors, after that win against Houston, over the 500 mark at 28-27. So they got to catch the Clippers if they want to stay out of the play-in. And the Clippers currently at 31-23 are 3.5 games in front of the Warriors. So the big question now going forward is, can the Warriors in the second half of the season with this new look team, with Jimmy Butler now infusing this squad where they have that inside-outside, they got an inside, I don't know the last time they had a real interior presence, a real guy that can get to the line, slow it down, score. I mean,
Durant.
But wasn't he more of a mid-range guy? I'm talking about living in the paint, like getting baseline, like just picking up those fouls because you're playing 4 feet from the hoop. Yeah,
I mean,
you're probably right.
He scored from wherever he wanted on the floor. That's how you get to 30,000 points. But no,
congratulations, by the way.
What?
Congratulations to KD's big week.
Oh yeah, it was overshadowed by the fact that his team's in just complete
turmoil.
Speaking of
overshadowed, remember the biggest trade in the beginning of the year is like, oh my God, Klay Thompson's in a Dallas Maverick uniform. Like, we're like so past that now that Luka's in LA. It's like,
you think Klay wishes he'd sign with the Lakers?
All right.
Well, I'm sure he thought he's going to be playing alongside Doncic this entire season and for the foreseeable future. And he's still got. I think the Mavericks are still going to be an issue if AD can be healthy, and even not. I think the fact that Kyrie now has been given free reign, it's like,
yeah, I'm like, you know what, Kyrie, do that more than just one game where you went for 42. Yes, he was amazing, but welcome to Steph's world, where it's just you and a bunch of plumbers and Uber drivers. Like, Steph's been doing that for going on nearly 4 years now, where everybody is just guarding you. If he can do that over the span of until whenever AD comes back, or if he does it for the remainder of the season, I'll give him his props. But he plays alongside Kevin Durant. He plays alongside Luka. He plays alongside LeBron James. Let's see him do what it is as a guard, what Steph's been doing, carry that load, what Steph's been doing for the last couple of years now, which is where it's just him and exclusively him. I know he did it for a game, but I'm not willing to go there. Maybe because I got some Kyrie hating me.
Well, number one, you'll see him in 8 days. He's going to be at Chase Center. Number two, yeah, he's not as good as Steph Curry, but that's like who is? I mean, I think Kyrie's incredible. What he did against the Warriors was pretty ridiculous.
He was so good.
He gave it to everyone. He's cut off a slice of humble pie for just about every person on that roster that was forced to guard him. And he can get hot with the best of, like, what he did in that game is what Steph usually does. Like that personal 9-0 run that he went on in the third quarter, and that last pull-up three where he just sprinted into the front court and stopped on a dime and dropped one in whoever's face from 30 feet. Like, that was Curry-esque. He's not Curry, but Kyrie's a pretty damn good player, Dan, so put some respect on him.
Fosse's hanging out in the East Bay as we open up the phone lines. 888-957-9570 if you want to get in on the conversation. Good morning, Fosse. What's up, man?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate the conversation. But look, I think some of those Western Conference teams that you guys are talking about, I think they all got worse, especially at the bottom there. Mavericks, Kings, Timberwolves. I think if the Warriors make a run for the playoffs, which I do think will happen, I think we take care of those teams. And even at the top of the Western Conference, the Thunder and the Grizzlies, I don't think the Warriors will have any issues with them, too, if they see them in the playoffs. I mean, those are really good teams. But we're talking about Steph Curry and playoff Jimmy Butler if we do get there. But, again, I do appreciate the conversation. I think one of the Western Conference teams that will give them the most problems is probably the Nuggets. But, again, we haven't even seen JK and Jimmy Butler on the floor yet, and I think that brings a different kind of dynamic as far as the offense goes. On the floor, you got two athletic guys and a sharpshooter out there. I think the Warriors will make a deep run again if we get to the playoffs, but let's get there first. Cheers, boys.
Thanks, Fosse. You know, a team that we left out, or at least that I left out, that I think is going to be very dangerous is Minnesota. As bad as it's been, they could be the Dallas of last year where it just suddenly comes together. And, you know, Naz Reid becoming a starter. Gobert's been hurt. If Randall figures this out, if DiVincenzo is like, okay, this is how we do it in Minnesota, they got the bodies along with a star, a true proven star in Anthony Edwards, where that could be a little problematic for everybody. I think everyone is just hoping that, okay, we just get through the season and it continues to be chaos in Minnesota, that they don't figure it out. But there's a chance the light could go on out there in Minnesota.
Well, they're starting to figure it out.
Yeah, they are.
And it's been because Julius Randle hasn't been playing.
And Naz Reid's now a starter.
Yeah, Naz Reid is awesome. And I think that's what's going to be the difference between them winning a couple postseason series like they did a year ago and potentially getting bounced in the first round. He's cat light. You know, I think he's a better defender than Karl Anthony Towns. He's obviously less gifted offensively, but Cat was able to somehow become a perfect complement for Rudy Gobert, and I think Naz Reid is that player. Julius Randle he's a good basketball player, but he just doesn't fit what they have. He doesn't apply himself defensively the way they need him to. He is ball dominant, and I think kind of ruins possessions more so than he helps them. So if Chris Finch is willing to do what needs to be done, which is bring that guy off the bench for the rest of this season and have Naz Reid play alongside Rudy, I do think that they have a chance to be very good. But at the end of the day, it's like in the postseason, it comes down to players. And that's what's exciting about the Warriors now is they now have a couple of players. Curry and Jimmy Butler are players. The Minnesota Timberwolves have Anthony Edwards. He's a dude. SGA and Chet, J-Dub, they're dudes. The Houston Rockets, I don't think, have a lot of dudes, although Amin Thompson is really impressive. Jalen Green's good. Şengün's good. But, you know, Memphis has got dudes. But the Warriors now, I think, can legitimately look at a team and say, all right, how does our best two match up with their best two?
See, I think it comes down to, yes, dudes. I think it comes down to experience, especially in the NBA. Every single year, it's about who's been here before. And is this stage too big for you? All right, we want to continue the conversation. We see you on the phone lines. Hang on, 888-957-9570. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes as we continue with Warriors this week. I want to get into, can the Warriors catch the Clippers for the number 6 seed? Can you avoid this entire play-in? Do you think it can happen? It's 3.5 games with Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga on the horizon. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, Warriors this week. We'll be back with more and your calls after this.
Now it's time for the closer of the week. Presented by LiftMaster and R&S Doors. Turn your garage into the envy of the neighborhood. Visit R&S. Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Is that Macklemore and Lewis back in the day?
Yes, sir.
So do you know that
Seattle's finest, right?
Ryan Macklemore? No, what's Mac's first name?
I'm not sure. I know Ryan Lewis is the other guy I worked with.
Yeah, so he actually married somebody that I don't want to say I introduced the two. So he interned. This is a true story. And I gave
Dan Cupid DeVoe.
No, I gave him, because I'm that kind of guy, a little bit of a I'll just leave that out. He really wanted to get into photography back in the day. And he was a really artistic young man. And Macklemore was a huge Mariners fan.
Oh,
and just sort of a knockaround guy that was doing rap way back when I was running around out there in Seattle. So congratulations to those two gentlemen who've hit it big. I do want to get into the Golden State Warriors and whether or not they can catch the number 6 seed right now, which is the LA Clippers, who are at 31-23. Currently, the Warriors are 3.5 games back. Can they avoid the play-in and catch the Clips? I want to get into that. But first, let's hear from Hassan, who's hanging out in Dublin, out in the East Bay. Hassan, welcome to the show. What's up, man?
Hi, good morning, sir. Thank you for taking my call. Really appreciate it. So I'm a huge avid admirer of 95.7. So I look at the Western Conference, and I think nobody's talking about it too seriously. I personally feel the winner of Western Conference is going to be LA Lakers. I think with this trade of Luka and their offensive power with LeBron and Austin Reeves playing at a high level, and the recent trade rescinded, and they got the connect back on shooting. I think they're a hell of a good team now. And I agree with you. I think OKC still needs a couple of years, maybe another year to get past the Western Conference Finals. But I think it's going to be LA Lakers.
That's a good call, Hassan. Ev, what do you think? The Lakers, I mean, we got to see how they didn't look very good against Utah in the home and home. But they still don't have a big, because Mark Williams, we haven't talked since Mark Williams got
Yeah, you're welcome, by the way. You're welcome. I'll take a victory lap on that.
You know, the biggest omen out of all of that is here's Charlotte that's looking to rebuild, right? And if you're all about
they
young
almost
players,
pulled a fast one on Rob Pelinka.
and they're like, they're looking to rebuild. Why the hell are they shopping a guy at 7'1" who's got all that athletic ability? What is it that they're hiding? And I bet you Rob Pelinka, you know how he likes to have coffee, right? That's how he got things done with Nico Harrison.
As do I.
I think he had coffee with somebody, and they're like, well, bro, what are you doing? Hold on, man. Mark Williams, do you understand that Charlotte is trying to get rid of him? Ask yourself, why would Charlotte, who's all about a rebuild, all about young players, trying to give you a 22-year-old 7'1" center? Look, get out of this thing.
Well, that's why.
It sounds a little hinky with the,
Well, that's why you and the Kevin O'Connors of the world and the Bill Simmonses of the world, you got to look deeper. You got to think about why. Why? This is always...
It was a great stick on your part. Great call.
Well, I always wonder at the deadline, why is a player getting traded? Like, if that player is so good, why are they on the market? And the reason is obvious. He's broken. He cannot play basketball because he can't stay on the court. It's not that he's not good, and all the numbers you brought up were fair, but it's like the only number that I care about is 35%. That's the amount of games that he's played. And he's 23 years old. So the Los Angeles Lakers, I think, dodged a bullet. Now, what sucks about it is the fact that they even got swindled in the first place to make the deal meant that they couldn't go out and get a different center. And that, as much as I respect Hassan's insight and analysis about the Lakers, that is going to be their downfall. The reason why they lost to the Jazz is because Jackson Hayes got hurt during the middle of the game. Dorian Finney-Smith was out, and I forget who the other player was. Like, Dorian Finney-Smith is now maybe their best defensive player. Jackson Hayes is integral to what they have to do. They're not going to be able to guard anybody in the postseason because they traded all of their defense for the future, which it's a move you make 10 times out of 10. But The Lakers' downfall is going to be on the defensive end of the floor, and it's going to be because they don't have a big.
Well, they certainly don't have a rim protector. Really quick, just to get back to Mark Williams, how does that work when you rescind a trade? Let's just say Charlotte, in that interim window before Mark Williams was sent back to Charlotte, let's say Charlotte says, okay, we just lost a big. It's the trade deadline. Let's go make a move, and we'll go get Lynn from Sacramento. What happens if they make a move to plug the gap of so what they thought was a traded Mark Williams to that of the Los Angeles Lakers? Do they get to rescind that deal?
That I don't know. I mean, well, Len was like a buyout candidate,
no,
right?
No, I'm just saying, like, let's just say they made a trade to fill the void of Mark Williams.
Yeah.
And then Mark Williams comes back to the team, and now you have this player that you just traded for.
Oh, I see. No, that's a good question. I don't think that you can rescind both. You're kind of stuck, which is why, I mean, on paper, it looked really good, right? You got your point guard of the future, you got your center of the future. But if they made a different move, I don't think they'd be able to take that back.
That's just very...
So the Dalton Connect Hornets era.
I love the Dalton Connect. He actually went to a Charlotte game, and he sat in street clothes at the end of the bench. And now he comes back, and it's just like, hey, we really didn't mean any of that. We really do like you.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I spoke too soon. The happiest guy in that deal was Dalton Connect. You're telling me I was going to Charlotte, where I was probably going to sit around and mire in mediocrity for quite some time. I get back to Los Angeles. I don't care that they tried to trade me, or they may try to trade me this summer. Get me to a place that is not in basketball, just purgatory. Like, Dalton Connect should be the happiest man right now in the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'm with you. All this talk of it's going to be really awkward with Dalton Connect, and you just lost the guy because what it is you just tried to trade him away. How's it going to work with him? He's not going to give you 100. Well, the hell with that. I mean, Dalton Connect. What a year for Dalton Connect. First of all, he goes to the Lakers, which was a bit of a surprise, and then you get traded to Charlotte. And then you go back to LA, all in your rookie season. Yeah, I'm with you. You're just happy to be back in SoCal. But
100%.
I think that the fact that the Lakers don't have that rim protector, I just, one of the things that I hate doing things on paper. Like when we look at this and just like you don't have a center. He's not gonna. Let's just see how this plays out. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but LeBron and Luka and Austin Reeves, the team's been white hot, even without AD. They've been one of the hottest teams in the NBA. They've moved up to the 5 seed, man. They're knocking on the door for the 4 seed. So
yeah, but that was also, again, before they made that trade. Like, they were playing good basketball with and without, because he was hurt, Anthony Davis. I don't know. It's going to be hard for the Warriors to climb the standings. There's also a super chat we got to get to here, Dan. Appreciate Acco Pest Control chiming in. Wants to mention the fact that did you know that Jimmy makes more than Jordan Poole, Clay, and Wiggins? So what exactly did the front office accomplish? They traded a first with Poole. Poole's contract wasn't bad. Poole's a better player than Chris Paul. If you disagree, Jimmy should get them to this postseason, right? Yeah, I think Jimmy will get the Warriors to the postseason, Atco, and thank you for the donation. I think Jimmy will get the Warriors to the playoffs. I think it's going to be really hard for them to get to the 6. Like, I know that the Warriors' goal is to get to the 6, but to me the most realistic path to making noise in the playoffs, if you're Golden State, is winning the first play-in game. It's getting to the 7 or the 8, having a one-shot crack at not having to play OKC in the first round. And that one game is the scenario why you traded for Jimmy Butler, because he has a history of playing well in big moments alongside Steph and Draymond, obviously. That's why you put this 3 together, I think, is for a play-in scenario, which they haven't had a lot of success in recent memory.
I think as an older team, you want to avoid playing games that you don't necessarily have to. If you can avoid playing in that play-in tournament, get to the 6th seed. I think that's going to be more beneficial, especially when you talk about your best players being as old as they are. Because right now,
you got to jump 4 teams though. I know they're 3.5 games back.
No, it's difficult. I hear you. But when you think about those 4 teams, those are 4 teams. We'll see what happens to Minnesota. Again, they're sort of the danger on the outside. They scare me. But if the chaos continues, Dallas is sinking like a stone. Those are teams that are coming back to you. I mean, you could be headed in a different. The Warriors are headed in one direction. I think those other teams are sort of fading quickly, potentially.
That I agree with. Like, so Lorenzo Neal, who helps us out during football season, played in the league for damn near 20 years. He always talks about in the NFL, at the further you get into the year, you either get better or you get worse. Like, you don't stay the same. And I think that's the same for all sports, because the war of attrition takes its toll, and either you're able to fight through it because you can see yourself gaining momentum, gaining ground. Like, I think the Warriors now have that adrenaline boost, right? The injection of life that is Jimmy Butler. They're a team that's getting better. Sacramento got worse at the deadline. I think they're going to fade. They're going to get worse. I think because of injuries, the Dallas Mavericks will get worse. I don't see the Timberwolves getting worse. I don't see the Clippers getting worse. And so to me, if you're the Warriors, like, getting to the 8, I don't necessarily think is going to be that tall of a task. I mean, it's not going to be easy. Like, you're going to have to win on the 23rd against Dallas. You're going to have to stack wins over your last 27. But jumping the Timberwolves and the Clippers, or even the Lakers if they fall a little bit, I think that's going to be really hard, because those teams are playing better. They're getting better. And I don't see them falling below like 46 or 47 wins. Like, the West might again have 650 win teams or 550 win teams, and that 6th seed is at 48 or 49. And, you know, again, the Warriors just got to play really solid basketball, consistent basketball for the rest of this season. And while they're 3-1 to begin the Jimmy Butler era, Dan, they still have not yet won 3 in a row since they started 12-3. And you're going to have to win at least 3 in a row if you're looking at getting to the 6.
That's going to come to an end, I think.
I would hope so.
It's getting back to Jimmy Butler and the identity. And I think that's really sort of the operative word here, is that they finally have an identity. I see the Golden State Warriors now, and I know what the hell it is that they're doing. I understand who they are, what sort of basketball team they are, and it's not just Steph and then a bunch of guys. And one of the things that Butler does is just, I love the fact that he just lives in the paint. I don't know if you know anything about me, like, there's too many guys shooting threes, and the fact that he's all mid-range and or just right around the rim, and slows down the game also by getting to the free throw line so you can regather. That's been certainly something that's been much talked about. But I really think the true identity that he brings to this team specifically is when Steph's off the floor. Because they've been groping for an answer for years now. And sometimes it was Jordan Poole, but that didn't work out, so they went and got Chris Paul. This year, Andrew Wiggins can be good, but, you know, I know he was consistent this year, but how reliant are you on Andrew Wiggins going forward? It's always been sort of this, you know, all of these sort of different iterations, and nothing really stuck. Now, there's no doubt. When Steph's off the floor, the offense now goes through one guy, and it's Jimmy Butler. There's another alpha on this basketball team, and it's Jimmy Butler. It's clearly his team when Steph is off the floor. There's another adult in the room. And I know Draymond plays that role to a certain degree, but Draymond is not an offensive threat. And Draymond, because of his lack of ability to score the basketball, doesn't give you the same sort of presence in terms of having that stability. And now with Steph, when he's sitting on a bench for the first time in I don't know how long, that you feel as though the Golden State Warriors are in good hands, or at least have a purpose and a direction, and once again, an identity.
Well, he makes them better, but there are consequences, and that is, you traded your best perimeter defender. You also traded your second best three-point shooter by percentage. Like, that's just a fact. And the Warriors were already a team that wasn't a very good three-point shooting team. So I, like you, enjoy watching Jimmy Butler get into the post. I think his mid-range game is going to come. I still think his jump shot is more of a feel thing that he's working through. He made his first three against the Rockets, but he's not a three-point shooter. You know, the Warriors are going to have to figure out how to score in a different way than they did before. I think that, like, for example, the Kerr strategy of getting up 45 or 50 threes at the beginning of the year, like that can't be the strategy anymore. The strategy has to be, I think, trying to figure out how they can stack, good possessions inside the three-point line. And if Curry's open, maybe Buddy is coming off the bench. If Podziemski's an adequate three-point shooter, Moody is at, I think, 37 or 38%. They have some decent three-point shooters, but they lost someone that could knock 3 or 4 threes down if you need him to. So their offense is gonna look different. It might be more effective, it might not be, but they got better, I think, overall, but they got worse in some areas. So, the one thing that I think Jimmy does, again, his game translates to the playoffs, like it just does. Mid-range has to be available to you in the postseason because teams are going to shut the water off if you're a team that only shoots threes. The fact that Jimmy Butler can get to the free throw line better than anybody since they had Kevin Durant. Even Kuminga, who gets to the line a lot, is not as good of a shooter as Butler is. That's something that excites me. And how Kuminga pairs with him when he comes back as another player that also is good inside the three-point line. That excites me. But I think the Warriors' offense is going to look a lot different. And not that Wiggins was some sniper from three-point range, but now Buddy Hield's not starting. Wiggins is gone. Is it post? Like, you just don't have a lot of three-point threats left on this team.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned post because now you have options. Like, now you have this stretch five where you can, depending on the matchup, you can insert Quentin Post. There's options to this basketball team that they otherwise didn't have. Or otherwise you can start Kevon Looney, or you could just go small. Suddenly there's variables that weren't available to Steve Kerr. That with obviously the addition of Jimmy Butler and now the emergence of Quentin Post, that now he has at his disposal. One thing about Jimmy Butler, if I was to be critical, is that, and he's always done this, and I think it's important to keep in mind, he's still getting his sea legs. Like that game against, you pointed out Kyrie Irving's huge performance. I would say that might, one of the reasons why it was one of his greatest games is because he won it with a defensive play by taking that charge on Jimmy Butler. But I think if Butler's in midseason form, or if he's been playing basketball, we have to keep in mind that he was in that doghouse and was suspended indefinitely out there in Miami, is that if Jimmy Butler was playing basketball on the regular, he gets that hoop. He stays to his right hand, but he's still a little awkward simply because I don't think he has his legs. But one of the things that he does that drives me nuts.
Jimmy?
You see a lot of this in the NBA. If you're 6'7" and you got to step on a guy and you're headed to the hoop and it looks as though you're either going to dunk or you're going to get the layup, and then you kick out at the last minute because people are so in love with the three, and you're going, Daryl Morey, it's like, give me the three. Stop doing that. Like, get to the rim and either get fouled or get the bucket. Stop, put on the horse blinders. Once you get a step on a guy and you're a big, don't worry about who's hanging out on the periphery. Don't worry about who's standing in three-point territory. The draw and kick, I know, is such a big part of today's game, right? It's about puncturing a defense and then kicking the three-point shooters. Like, that's the formula to winning almost to a fault. Like, Jimmy Butler on a couple of occasions is at the rack, and then at the last instance is kicking out to Moses Moody for a 25-foot three that he misses.
Well, but if Moody makes that three against the Mavericks, you probably win the game. And that's where the Warriors are going to run into trouble. You're right. Maybe he shouldn't kick out to a shooter. But he is. He will do that. Everyone on the war, it's the way the game is played. You drive and kick. And if the shot is there, then you got to live and die with it. And what do the Warriors not have a lot of? Quality three-point shooters. Like, Moses Moody is a fine three-point shooter. He's not elite. When Kuminga comes back, he's not an elite three-point shooter. Even Buddy Hield, who probably has the best ability outside of Steph to be an elite three-point shooter, has not been that this season. Podziemski's not a threat as much as he can make some three. Draymond's not a threat. Jimmy's not a threat.
He's been Well, we got to give him his props. He's been much better of late.
Who?
Pods.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, shooting percentage-wise, but as far as, like, I also wonder how he's going to play now that he's back in the starting lineup. Because I think that he had a really nice role carved out for himself as a guy off the bench that could come in, play alongside either Steph or Jimmy, play up tempo, force pace, but now he's the starting two. Like, now he's going to have to check the best guard on the other team. That's a lot to ask of Podziemski, and I don't think he's someone that is going to be able to do that. So, you know, the Warriors roster is still not without holes. Like, they still got two positions that they got to figure out. And just because Pods is taking over for Hield doesn't mean that he's the answer. He's just a better answer than Chivano. Just because Post is playing center doesn't mean he's the answer. He's just a better answer for Trace Jackson-Davis, who, oh, by the way, got his first minutes last night in a basketball game for the first time in like 2 weeks.
Hey, how did you
being
do?
In the Rising Stars Challenge.
How did you do last night?
I don't know.
Oh, they won.
Dude, I was at the Cigar Lounge. I wasn't watching that game.
Oh, yeah, so he's moved on, man.
I heard about, so Terrell Owens was at the party last night because he came over from the celebrity game. I heard he had 17.
Oh, wow.
Or 18 points. But it was a joke, too. Like, I think the celebrity game was a combined 2 for 40 from three-point range. It was like the Warriors against the Mavericks.
Myles Garrett in that thing again?
No, I don't think they let football players in, active ones. No, it was like, I saw Drewski's in it as a comedian. I think he's pretty funny. 2 Chainz was all right, that's it. 2 Chainz the best basketball player on that floor, and he was a coach. He didn't even play. I think Bonds and Rice were the 2 celebrity coaches. I don't know, Dan. The All-Star Weekend is just...
Bonds was a baller back in the day. Shout out Sarah High School.
Oh, yeah. No, he was legit. The guy's an amazing athlete. But the All-Star Weekend just ain't what it used to be, man.
I know you have this outlook, but I'm telling you, young fella, it's going to be revitalized. It's going to be resuscitated this weekend.
Tonight?
Oh, no, what's going on tonight? Nah, forget about all this nonsense.
What's the part of the weekend?
The game tonight or tomorrow night. I'm really... The Rising Stars tournament, first of all, was legit. And I think that the Rising Stars, now that Trace Jackson-Davis led Rising Stars to take on, who are they going to play in the first round? So first of all, for those of you that aren't familiar with
it, they're going to play the OGs. They're going to play Shaq's team.
They're going to play Shaq's team.
So Curry, Durant, LeBron.
So I think that, first of all, for those of you that aren't familiar with the new format, so they have the Rising Stars tournament that took place last night. And so 4 Rising Star teams played, right? 2 semifinal games. And then the champion now advances into the All-Star tournament, which is comprised of 3 teams that were drafted by the 3 TNT personalities, that being Kenny Smith, Shaquille O'Neal, and Charles Barkley, made up of obviously the best players in the NBA. And the 4th team is this Rising Star team. So the Rising Star team will play a semifinal game with the winner advancing to take on the winner of the 2 All-Star game, or the 2 All-Star teams.
Yeah, but it's like the 16 seed play-in game. Like whoever gets Norfolk State is just going to go get waxed by Virginia. Yeah, the Rising Stars have no chance to beat the older squad.
You have a chance if it's the All-Stars that we've seen over the last decade. You sure as hell do. Win that game. I bet there's a line on it. I'll take the points, man.
I know that I'm young, but give me the old guys.
How about we do this? Find out the line on that game.
It's rigged anyways.
I'll take the points. Man, why are you so sour? You get the whole world in front of you. You get the world by the gonads, my man.
Yeah, the world's going to hell.
We'll be back. Yes, D-Day is on its way. Evan Giddings, Dan Avone, 95.7. The game continues right after this.
Hey, it's Willard and Dibs for Safeway. Enjoy these amazing deals for members and as always.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone, and Warriors this week. And what a week it was, with the Golden State Warriors go 3-1 on the new Jimmy Butler era. And there's a lot of optimism as we get ready for the second half of the season. And in the last 27 games of the year, the Warriors are going to make a push to try and get out of the play-in tournament. Get into the play-in tournament, I guess, is sort of an achievement when you think about how dire things were about a month ago at this time. It was a team that I was suggesting should head in the other direction and get a single draft pick, like get a single-digit draft pick. That should be about the future. It'll be interesting to see where Cooper Flag ends up. I hope it's not Charlotte, but we can get into that conversation.
Probably Utah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't know. I mean, shoot, the Atlanta Hawks were the 10 seed last year, played in the play-in game, somehow won the lottery, and ended up with that random Frenchman that is now Reshaped.
He's terrible.
Well, the Hawks can score. That's about all they can do.
It's been a terrible. You know what might turn out to be Donovan Clingan. The second half of the season might be the best player in that draft.
Well, I know you like them too.
It's because DeAndre Ayton's out. Well, DeAndre Ayton's out, so Clingan's now got an opportunity just to shine.
Oh, that name reminds me. That's actually who I thought that Mark Williams was, regardless of the injuries. Like I think that there's this understandable, like, I don't know, just fixation on centers that can play because there's so few of them. And the elite ones are obviously coveted. But it's like anytime a center shows any sort of promise at a young age, well, they're the hot thing. And I just feel like DeAndre Ayton was that for the Phoenix Suns. And they made an NBA Finals, and he's had some success. But it's like now he's just another toy because he's not that young anymore. And people realize that he doesn't play defense. He's not that efficient of an offensive player. And to me, even if he could stay healthy, that's kind of where Mark Williams was headed.
Well, I think Donovan Clingan's ready to fill his shoes in a good way.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't need the ball, and he plays defense, and he plays hard, and he does everything that you need from a modern center. Like, I know that the Warriors and a lot of their fans have always asked for this big man, right? I think that's why also there's a lot of affinity for Quentin Post, because he's finally someone that can step out and hit a three. But you don't necessarily need that. The Warriors have won championships with a bunch of centers that may not even be starters on other teams.
Yeah, but the league continues to evolve. And the thing about Quentin Post, he was really good, but if you're wondering why he gets taken off the floor, teams go at him defensively. Like you can extend on the offensive end and be a stretch five, but can you extend on the defensive end and still be effective, or at least hold your own? Like that's where it really, and teams realize that they could exploit him a little bit. And the reason why I don't think you saw him as frequently as maybe when he first came onto the scene a couple of weeks back. And I think teams are beginning to figure that out.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. And look, he's a rookie, and I think he's being asked to do a lot, perhaps too soon. But I think it's interesting that his best games,
Chicago,
they've come against crap teams or undermanned teams that aren't going to test you or test him defensively. Like, I actually think he kind of got, I don't want to say bailed out, but the game on Wednesday, it wasn't just Buddy Hield that was terrible defensively. Like, Quentin Post got played off the floor, but because Hield got more run and shouldn't have been in the game as long as he was, you kind of lost track of the fact that the Warriors, they didn't just have Hield getting beat on the perimeter, but Post just couldn't keep anybody out of the paint. And I think he's a good player, and he's got to continue to play to get better, but he does make them vulnerable defensively. And, it's like there's kind of there's still that damned if you do, damned if you don't part of the Warriors where they got better in some places at the deadline, they got worse in other areas, and now it's about how they can try and cover up more of their weaknesses and accentuate their strengths.
It's going to be, once again, I think, coming down to Kevon Looney being your guy.
Yeah, I agree. I
think he's, as much as that guy gets overlooked, the minute that guy was DMP'd at one point, as many times as they go in another direction, he just bides his time, keeps his nose clean, and whenever you call his number, there he is.
Or Draymond playing more of the center position. I mean, I think that's going to end up being the answer for them in closing lineups. Like, at full strength, what do you think the Warriors' best five is? What do you think they should close games with?
Well, Steph, Pajemski, Butler, and Draymond, and then Kuminga.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's the best.
Who the hell's shooting for you, though?
And there lies the question. That's my point. It's like, I think that is their best five. I think you're right, but they also have some holes. How are they going to generate offense? Is it going to be strictly in the post? Is it going to be Curry running off of 3 different screens to get open? I think it makes them better defensively, which also might be able to get them out in transition, but maybe they might not run as much because that's an older line. I don't know. Like, they're going to have to figure this thing out. And more importantly, Steve Kerr is going to have to figure this thing out. And I don't know, like, I haven't been super critical of Kerr this year, but to me, with a year left on his deal after this, in many ways, I think we're going to find out if Kerr is, like, I think if this thing goes off the rails for some reason, like if the Warriors don't make the playoffs somehow, some way, I think there is a very real possibility that Kerr does not return as the head coach.
Well, I tell you what, Steve Kerr in that game against Houston, why the hell he hung on to that lineup when Houston was making that run and closed it within a bucket, and he still had Pajemski, Guy Santos, Buddy Hield, Spencer was out there, and he was resting everybody. It was just like, how much longer are you going to do this? I get it. It's like, it was a back-to-back, and that's the other thing is that the load management of these guys is a real thing, which is why I think, I know they got to jump a lot of teams, but for the Warriors specifically, not having to play extra games and avoiding that play-in tournament, it could be crucial if you want to make a serious run.
And they're going to fill out the rest of their roster. I think there was a limit on the guys that they could have. Like, they had to have 12 up until a certain time. It might have even been the All-Star break. But, like, they just signed Kevin Knox from their G League squad in Santa Cruz to the team. He's going to fill out the back end of the roster. I don't know how many of these guys are going to, play big minutes with their full strength. But you're right. You're going to have to still load manage your older players, or God forbid Jimmy rolls an ankle and goes down for a week. That's something that also I don't know if it's going to happen this year because he hasn't played much basketball, so he's still fresh. But Jimmy Butler only averaged like 56 regular season games his time in Miami. Like, he's kind of been known to take regular seasons off. So those depth pieces that are now depleted because you traded away, as much as I didn't think these guys were incredible this season, Dennis Schroeder, he can play 35 minutes if you need him to. Kyle Anderson was a guy that could come off the bench and give you 15, 20 minutes if you're depleted. Even Lindy Waters III was somebody who was kind of a throwaway piece of the deal. And obviously Andrew Wiggins, who can play 35 minutes back-to-back games and has kind of been an Iron Man. You traded away 4 guys that gave you depth. And if Butler or Curry or Draymond, or God forbid all 3, are going to miss time at any point for the rest of this season, you're not really left with much.
I think it's important, just like any other big trade, is that you just let this breathe a little bit. And I know we live in the here and now, but we really have to see what this looks like over the next month. And just, it's difficult to assess. I know it's all feel good right now. There's optimism, so you'll take it. They certainly look like a better team with Jimmy Butler, but sometimes there's another shoe that's going to drop. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be the end of the Warriors or it's not going to work, but you just have to see. It's sort of like when I was a young man and you go on a date with a young lady and everybody is flirtatious at first and everybody puts their best foot forward initially. Everybody's just in this good mood and they're talking about how, they're trying to be funny. And then after a while, if there's, a connection, I'd usually say 6 to 8 months, you begin to see maybe, they have a little temper tantrum. Oh, didn't see that the first couple of months. Suddenly begin to realize, what sort of person they are in terms of patience or impatience. And the honeymoon is over and you're like, oh, okay. That's who you are. It's not necessarily like, I can't deal with you. I don't want to talk to you again. It's just like, now I have a better understanding of who you are. And like, yeah, let's do this together. Or, I don't know if this is going to be a good fit. But right now, we're clearly in the honeymoon with Jimmy Butler. And I think we all need to sort of remind ourselves.
Yeah, they're in.
Did you like the analogy?
Well, I was going to take it a step further. they're in the bunny phase. They're in the bunnies phase right now.
Oh,
the Warriors are doing a lot of fornicating. All right, they're having some fun together. But
well, you did take it a step further. Go ahead.
What happens when that lust wears off? We're going to find out, and that's. But that's also, too, why the trade was absolutely necessary, and you had to make it because this team was going nowhere, and the moves in the bedroom were pretty stale, right? You needed to switch things up a bit. You had to find a new partner, and Jimmy Butler is that guy. So the Warriors are
must-watch television. Can we keep this PG rated? Can we do the analogy and just talk about dating without going straight up porn?
I didn't take it there. Daniel, you got to be able to mask some things, and I would expect you as a savvy veteran to understand the delicacies of conversation. The point is, the Warriors right now, you want to continue to watch them every single night because I also think that they're in the process of figuring out what this looks like. I think they have an identity now, and that's important, but they don't yet truly know what their ceiling is. And I think that's what's exciting for a lot of the fans is that you could envision them being a team. I've heard Western Conference Finals this week. I've heard play-in, realistically or kind of pragmatic. We're still a play-in team. But the point is there's a spectrum. We're back to talking about basketball. We're back to talking about things on the floor that lead to wins and losses. We're not discussing should they trade Steph. We're not discussing what moves are they going to make this summer. We're not discussing the finances and the aprons and all the big picture macro end of the world scenarios that we were inevitably going to get into for the last 2 months of this season if they did not make a trade. So that's what I like more than anything else about the Butler acquisition is that we're back to talking basketball with the Golden State Warriors, which is what we should have been in the first place. But because of how mediocre they were for like 2 months, it was hard to even wrap your mind around it.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's exciting again, and they're relevant again. And you're right. It may not work out, but at least we're talking about this team being better, and we're talking about games. We're talking about scenarios where they catch the Clippers. Can they pick up the 3.5 games? The level of optimism, which has been so void, especially at these shows over the last 2 months, is welcomed. And no matter what happens going forward. Yeah, you're right. We're talking hoops again, and we're all in on it. I mean, we're so accustomed to, and they've been so synonymous with winning for so long, that it's just awkward the last 2 months. It's like, what the hell is this? We don't really know how to swallow that.
No, and I don't think that it's all of a sudden like, hey, they're back to winning a championship. But again, it's like they have, like I thought the reaction, because I did post game on Wednesday to the Mavericks loss. I thought the reaction was really telling. Because people were passionate, and that was a big loss. Like, it dropped you to 500. It was a game against an undermanned team without 6 of their rotation pieces. But people were back, instead of being like, oh, well, I knew they were going to blow it, or I know that the Warriors are this kind of team. People were disappointed, and I think they were disappointed because there's a set level of expectation, or there's been a reset of expectation for this team. Like, if I was to ask you what you expect from this group, yeah, you could say, well, we're going to see, but like, could you see this team winning a playoff series?
Sure.
I could too. I could not say that before. And it's as much about Curry having help as it is Jimmy Butler just being a dude for this team. But, I think the Warriors, and I also think that this weekend kind of made the trade important as well, because imagine what all the questions were going to be for, like, Draymond right now is, I think they're practicing, but Draymond had press availability this morning. Buddy Hield was talking about the 3-point contest at Chibano. Steph is going to be talking about a myriad of things at his press availability. What would those questions have been if the Warriors did not make a move at the deadline.
Yeah.
I mean, they would be trying to put a fire out to this existential crisis that Warriors fans would be freaking out about. And instead, it's, you like Jimmy, or, they're talking about fun stuff. Draymond was being asked about who he likes in one-on-ones. Chivano's being asked about breaking out of his slump. I don't know. Steph's going to be talking about the weekend in his court and the Acropolis that's Chase Center. They're talking about fun things. They're not talking about dreadful stuff.
The Acropolis, that is his court. My God.
You're welcome.
The depth on you. My God.
Sorry.
What was your major again?
Double. I majored in economics and rhetoric.
Do you know your Greek history relatively well?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
That had beaten into me, bludgeoned with a self-flagellating strap like the one from the Da Vinci Code.
Are you going back to porn again? What are we doing?
No. You remember the albino in the Da Vinci Code?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's basically beat himself with a striped belt, just whip himself every single night. Yeah, it's self-flagellation.
Just getting back to the Warriors, if you don't mind.
I don't.
This is, again, I go back to the Western Conference, which is very peculiar this year because Boston does not play, obviously, in the West. There is not a seasoned team. Even the Denver Nuggets, if you were to tell me the Denver Nuggets were to pick up where they left off of a couple of years ago when they won the NBA championship and they're running away and hiding with everybody, I'd be saying that's a tough team to beat. But they've obviously got holes and they've got warts this year. I'm not getting my head into the clouds. I'm hopefully keeping 2 feet, firmly planted, terra firma here. But I think there is a sense of, and I don't think the Warriors even want to entertain this or think about it because you got to take care of what's on your plate. And what's on your plate is just, get to the damn play-in tournament. But the Thunder again, the Grizzlies, the Rockets, teams that are in front of them, that are at the top tier, the very best of the Western Conference, are not experienced. And the Warriors, they have that advantage over all of those teams, and that is really significant. Maybe not as much in baseball or the NFL, but in basketball, it is proven year in and year out. You'll take experience because experience has been proven that you can move, you can advance. And so the idea of the Thunder in the first round, a team they've been able to handle during the regular season, the Thunder are a better team. And the Thunder may, turn it up and could be that team that could run away and hide as they have from everybody when you look at their one-loss record. But I just think that you got to give teams like the Lakers, the Warriors, even Minnesota, and Dallas, as I mentioned, who's had OKC's number, a puncher's chance. And I think more than anything else is that what should give the Warrior fans and Dub Nation optimism is not only Jimmy Butler, but the fact that you're playing well. And then when you look at the top of the Western Conference, there is a real scenario where you could beat OKC and get to a finals or, as ridiculous as it might sound, get to an NBA championship. Because I think that could be a likely scenario. And maybe it's not the Warriors, but if it's the Lakers, if it's Minnesota, if it's one of these teams that are sort of on the lower rung of the ladder in the Western Conference, is not going to surprise me at all this year specifically.
No, and I think the postseason, look, they're going to need some help, and it might be catching OKC. I don't know if Chet gets hurt again. That's a different conversation. How does he respond? And how are they able to sort of, because they haven't really had him and Hartenstein.
Oh, they're so good together too.
Well, but they haven't had them together for that long. They look like they play well together. But my point is, maybe that's something that takes a little bit of time to figure out with the rest of their rotation. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I mean, he'll allow 105 points a game. It's just ridiculous. But you're right. There are teams that the Warriors definitely have advantages over in the experience department. I just wonder if they have enough talent. And that's why I think they made the Butler trade more than anything else, is because they were devoid of talent. They don't have guys that could match up with other players. And, Jimmy also has a track record of helping lower-seeded teams go deep in the playoffs But you look at the most recent run in 2023, and this is where I hear you. Like, experience does matter, but also catching a break can be the catalyst to you making a deep run. Why were the Heat able to get to the finals? When they lost to the Nuggets? Well, in the first round, Giannis got hurt. That was a Bucks team that then they could get over the top of. I mean, you caught a Boston team that wasn't yet ready to win. That's why they went out and made the move for Kristaps and for Drew Holiday. They recognized that Marcus Smart was not going to be a guy that could get them over the hump. Like, the Warriors are going to have to catch some teams in tough spots, I think, in order to win, because I still see some holes. But again, it's they got action, and they did not have action before. And the West is just, it's a bear, man. I mean, I'm looking up and down to the Eastern Conference. It's like, my God, the Warriors right now would be sitting pretty in 6th place, looking at a potential first-round matchup with the Pacers. It's like, give me that 7 days a week.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't want any part of the East, though.
What?
No.
Well, not the top.
Well, that's what I mean. You're not coming out of the East. Yeah, you could even get to the you may get to the finals, but no one's beating Boston. Whereas in the West,
because of the parity.
Well, no, it's just Boston's simply better than anybody. They're going to beat Cleveland.
I agree with that. Yeah,
Boston is just clearly the best team in the NBA. So in the West, you've got a puncher's chance unless you really buy into OKC, and until OKC does it when it counts. And as AI said, when your butt cheeks get tight, can you be a good basketball team? Until they do that, I'm still saying that door's ajar, man. Whereas in the East, it's like, yeah, beat the Pacers, but you know who's lurking, and you can't beat the Celtics.
Do you think there's something to Curry having a little bit of like a mini resurgence after the Butler trade? Do you think it was just because he's got like more energy, or do you see something, I mean, we can talk about this on the other side too, something stylistically different about this team? Or do you think he just got a second win?
Well, I still see him drawing the double teams, and I don't see anything schematically. I just think he's re-energized. He just, especially when you get to the dog days, which usually just about before the All-Star break, you lose that energy, and I think he was revitalized with Jimmy Butler. But I'm curious to what it is that you have to say. And we'll find out what it is. The young man, Evan Giddings, by the way, where are we going tonight? I text my man, Lucas, the president around here, El Prez. He's got nothing for us.
No, he doesn't. See, this is, all right, I know that you were locked up last night and had a nice evening. Last night was the night, dude. I mean, I was out and about.
Yeah.
I was at the cigar lounge. Jared McCain let me down. I was told he'd be able to get us into a Jordan party, so there was an Adidas thing that we had to substitute
Jordan
for.
in town? No,
just a Jordan brand. He's a Jordan athlete, so they had a Jordan brand thing. What I heard actually is apparently the Hennessy parties are where it's at. So one of the nightclubs downtown, I guess, had this underground sort of disco setup.
That's what we need is the underground, intimate, not too much head banging. I want to be able to hear who it is that I'm talking to. I want to hear myself talk.
Yeah, the speakeasies are much more, I think, of a fun time than like the big, I don't know, the big dance floor, big DJ, club and music.
Yeah.
Get me out of there.
Jesus. You're like 30 going on 65. You're hilarious. All right, young fella. When we continue, I want you to tell me what it is that you see in Steph Curry going forward. Is this the guy that's going to lead the way? Are they taking him to the promised land? Is it still Steph's world? Or is it all about the new kid, Jimmy Butler? Evan Giddings, stand of own. 95-7 the game. We'll continue after this.
Championship coming soon.
What's up, Roasters? It's your boy Joe Shasky, and I've got some huge news. The President's Day Sell-A-thon.
Now, back to Steiny
Now
and
back
Guru to 95.7 The Game.
Welcome in, Evan Giddings and Dan Devone. We are, a little more than 24 hours out from the All-Star game tomorrow night. 5 o'clock is the tip as the new format gets underway. We've talked about this throughout, something that you're not necessarily on board with.
Well, it's not that I'm not on board with it. I guess I'm just glass half empty about it changing anything. Like, I think it's going to be a different version of the same thing. And that's players not competing. I mean, at the very least, though, I think that the format will help because if a team is like disinterested or, they're breaking a sweat, at the very least, they got to get off the court. Like, at the very least, bring in another team that's willing to play at potentially a different speed. I also like the fact that they clearly set up the teams to have different themes to them. There's the older team, there's kind of the international squad, and then there's the young guys along with the G Leaguers. So I like that aspect of it because I think that while the draft was interesting a couple of years ago, while they tried to, sort of set up this idea you could play against your teammate in the All-Star game, I think pairing peers together, I'm hoping can help this thing.
I think the Rising Stars are really sort of where it all begins and ends with. If those guys bring the intensity, then it's going to change the entire outlook of this weekend, of this game going forward. And I think it's up to them. It's up to them to sort of, hopefully nobody has to drill this into them. Or maybe they do. Maybe it's the best thing. I think Candace Parker is coaching them tonight or tomorrow night. But I think the best thing that they could do is seriously.
It was supposed to be Moley. And I don't know if he thought his team was going to make it to Sunday, but Candace Parker will be taking over the reins.
Yeah. But I think if Candace Parker just says, hey, in all seriousness, TJD and Stephon Castle, I want you to D up on these boys. Like, win this damn thing. Because not to get overly dramatic about this, but if I'm a young player, and this might be the biggest game I've ever played in, I've never been on a stage like this. I mean, I could sort of set myself up. Like, maybe somebody's out there that's going to want to trade for me. Maybe this is something that could benefit my career. I am not mailing this thing in if I'm a rising star. And listen, these guys are not NBA All-Stars, and they have no business of being on the same court as LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Jalen Brunson, all of these Giannis and all these stars. But they are, Ev, at the end of the day, NBA basketball players. And if they want to bring it, then they could surprise some people. And I hope that they run out to a quick lead where suddenly, all of a sudden you see the All-Stars feeling as though they got to put it into another gear.
You're making Candace Parker out to sound like she's going to be Gene Hackman and Hoosiers. They lace their shoes up the same way that we do.
The swinging gate, baby.
Yeah, I mean,
don't get caught watching the paint dry.
I don't know. I also think it's like, yes, they may take the game seriously, but at the end of the day, if the best players don't take the game seriously, it doesn't mean much. Let's say even that, and I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say the Rising Stars team wins this entire thing. That devalues the All-Star game. That makes it more of a joke. If the young players
process
that are rookies and sophomores rise up and beat LeBron and Durant, why am I watching this thing? Why am I watching the best players if they're just going to lose to Trace Jackson Davis, who's getting DNPs left and right?
I think you got it wrong. Think about this. Think about this.
Talk to me.
If the Rising Star, a bunch of kids in the NBA that have potential, Stephon Castle is a good young basketball player. We've seen what Trace Jackson Davis can do. I like Zach Edey. You hate the guy.
Yep.
If these guys knock off in the semifinals an NBA All-Star team led by LeBron James and company, it's going to be like the biggest Cinderella in the history of the NBA.
Oh, my God.
And the momentum and the interest and the overall excitement that there's going to be generated for an NBA All-Star game to see this band of kids to see if they can take home the whole enchilada is going to be like unlike anything else we've ever experienced when it comes to this game.
I think it's going to be a massive embarrassment for the older players. To the point, Dan, since we're taking it as far as...
It's going to be like Appalachia State upsetting the University of Michigan in football.
Yeah, I mean, this ain't... Well, you're making it out to be Chaminade beating Virginia.
Ralph Sampson.
Yeah, which is not the case at all because Virginia has no incentive in this particular game to win. I don't know. Maybe there's a wink-wink deal and they're doing them a favor so they can get these guys some cash. But to me, it would be an embarrassment for the NBA if the Rising Stars team finds a way to win this thing or even wins a game. The entire purpose of this entire All-Star format, I believe, is to set up the OGs, the superstars of yesteryear against either the young international studs or against the, up-and-comers, the young All-Stars. It's supposed to be a generational battle. Like, that to me is what the final's supposed to be. So if the Rising Stars beat Curry, Durant, LeBron, why would I even watch the final?
You know what they're missing is that international component.
Well, I'm going to be there, which is,
If one of the teams was just of international stars.
Well, they are. The Chuck's team, I think,
is all international?
Well, that's like the theme of it. It's SGA, it's Jokic, it's Giannis, it's Doncic. Yeah, the international team, which I actually think is going to be the team that wins it.
Hockey's got it right.
How so?
Well, their midseason tournament right now, where it's Canada versus the United States and the Swedes and the Finns, they're out for blood, bro. It's a real deal.
Well, but it's more of an international sport.
Yeah, I know. You can only do it in hockey. I get it, but there's buy-in, man. There is national pride. They play that Finnish national anthem before the game, the Canadian national anthem, and people are singing that thing in unison, holding hands.
Which is also why people don't watch hockey. Like, as much as I do love international sports, it's really hard to get on board with because as an American, you're beaten with this stick of we're the best. It's ingrained in your brain that we're supposed to be number one with everything. That's why people don't watch the men's side of the World Cup, or at least they do until the Americans get bounced inevitably. Now, soccer fans watch everything. But as a spectator, like, I don't care because I know America's probably not going to win in hockey. I know America's probably not going to win, or there certainly is not going to win at all in soccer. And if the international stars come in and wipe the floor with the Americans this year, you better watch out. There might be a revolution at Chase Center.
There's something about, yes, there's regional pride. Like, you want to see the Warriors win. You want to see the Pac-12 do well. But
they're dead.
On a whole, well, I mean, back in the day, just sometimes there's just that, the regional, wherever it is that your team is located, or the Warriors, the Bay Area represent Chicago, Midwest, what have you. But it's on a whole different plateau and a different level when you're talking about representing a country, especially a country that, that's not considered a global power like that of the United States, both in every way. From an economic standpoint, military, however it is that you judge who's a powerful country and who's not. And then it's your one moment to be that, to have that opportunity to create that nationalism and pride. It's games with that on the line. The intensity is entirely different, man.
No, I agree, but I guess, and look, I hope you're right. I hope that something happens tomorrow that can bring legitimacy back to the NBA All-Star game. I guess I'm not convinced that we're going to look at the finals of Sunday's matchup between whoever it is as like this gold medal match.
No, it's not that. But we just need some buy-in. We can't. No,
I think you're right. I think it is going to be from the young players, but I guess I don't think it's going to be from the Rising Stars. I think it's either going to be the international team or I believe the Kenny's kids or whatever, Kenny the Jet Smith's team, all the young guys. That's got to be the team that takes it to people. That it has to be on the younger generation to legitimize the All-Star game. The old heads are done playing hard in those games. I'm sorry. Like, I was looking at Steph Curry's first All-Star game, 2014. The oldest player wasn't a starter. The starters for the West that year, it was Steph, Blake Griffin, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and I forget the fifth, but like all of those guys were in their 20s. On the East side, it was LeBron, who was, halfway through his career at that point. And really the only two old heads were, LaMarcus Aldridge might have been the other one. But like Dirk Nowitzki was the elder statesman for the West. And in the East, I forget who the oldest player was. It might have been like Wade, but the oldest player was like 32 years old. These guys are 36 and 37 now. And LeBron's 40. Yeah, they're out there trying to bust their hump. This is their 20th All-Star game.
No, it's a business trip. Like I said, they come out here and they meet with their sponsors and, they shake hands and they do what it is that their agent has them leading, tells them where it is that they need to be. But I would say this, that something is going to happen in the Rising Stars game. Something. I don't know what it is. I can't necessarily predict it, but there's going to be a moment.
You love Trace Jackson Davis.
No, not necessarily Trace Jackson Davis. Something is going to happen with Zach Edey. I don't know why. There's going to be, Zach Edey's going to accidentally throw a bow, or he's just going to he's going to turn, there's that, I know you love Rocky, right? You love Sylvester Stallone.
Bigger fan of Creed, but Rocky's good.
And Rocky 1 I will give you. So Rocky 1 was, that was the movie. And so there's that one scene where, and the whole premise behind, I think a lot of people forget, he's 1,000,000 to 1 shot. And so they're doing this in the bicentennial. So it's 1976.
Yeah.
And so they, originally Apollo Creed has this one boxer that bowed out because of an injury. So the promoter's like, okay, well, what do? We can't find somebody in 3 weeks. So they the promoter comes up with this idea. He's like, you know what? I got it. I think it was Apollo Creed that comes up with the idea. In the year of the bicentennial, in the land of opportunity, let's give an unknown a shot. Let's find somebody that's 1,000,000 to 1 shot at an opportunity to win the heavyweight championship, which used to mean something back in the day. And that guy happened to be Rocky Balboa. And so there's that one scene where Apollo Creed, being a businessman's a suit and tie, and he's talking about, the revenue that they're going to make and merchandise they're going to sell. And meanwhile, his trainer is watching Rocky on television after he was hitting the meet. And he's saying, hey, champ, you need to come see this guy. You need to come see this guy. He's like, this guy's taking it serious. And Apollo's like, yeah, whatever. I'm taking it serious too. And then his trainer, I know I'm going a long way, just stay with me here. His trainer says, this guy, during the fight, he says, this guy doesn't know it's a damn show because it's just supposed to be entertainment, bicentennial, you're going to beat him regardless. He thinks it's a damn fight. He's trying to beat you. He doesn't know that this is just about entertainment. And that needs to be played back for the Rising Stars who don't know that this is just a business trip. They think it's a damn game.
You heard it here first on 95.7 The Game. The Rising Stars team on Sunday is Rocky Balboa. And the old heads...
I know you're producing, but can we get the theme?
Shaq's team is Apollo Creed. Now, you might be right that this 1 in a million shot in the bicentennial, I don't know, soliloquy you got there, is going to give them a run for their money. But you do know how the movie ends.
Well, Rocky won, yeah.
Yeah. He loses.
It's a hell of a fight.
Yeah, it's a hell of a fight. But what was on the line? The heavyweight championship of the world. What is on the line on Sunday?
Pride.
Not even.
But here's the thing that you're misunderstanding. I don't think that you're fully gathering is that why are these guys all-stars? And I get it. It's just like, hey, man, let's just have a good time and get on my private jet and go back to my respective city.
Because there's a K-pop artist who got a bunch of votes.
But here it is, Ev. They're all competitors. And whether they want to admit that or not, once you poke that bear in the ribs, and even though they're like, hey, man, come on. Once Zach Edey accidentally goes too hard on a foul with somebody going to the hoop, These guys are competitors at the end of the day, and be damned about everything else that we don't care. It's an all-star game, and I'm 35 years of age. They're going to want to beat the crap out of you. And I think that if that sleeping giant gets awakened, we got ourselves a game.
That sleeping giant's been dormant for like a decade. Nobody in this game gives an F. And the thing is, even if Zach Edey throws an inadvertent elbow and catches somebody in the jaw, you know what the response is going to be? It's not going to be, oh, you woke up the bear, young fella. It's going to be, young fella, what are you doing? Why are you playing so hard in this game? You do know what this weekend is, right? It's a break. It's not an all-star weekend. It's not an all-star game. This is the NBA all-star break. 7 days between Thursday and the next time you actually have to play in a real basketball game. Young fella, put the bows away. And then Zach Edey's going to say, oh, well, I guess this is how it is. Because it's also the only time he's going to be an all-star because he stinks.
You know what they got to play for the Rising Stars? Not Rocky 1, but Rocky 2.
Oh, give me the Rocky 4 montage.
But was it Rocky 2 when Talia Shire, his wife, who was, what was his wife's name in the movie? I forget his wife's name, Rocky's wife in the movie.
Adrian.
When Adrian's in a coma and Rocky can't concentrate and Mick is trying to like, come on, we need to train. And he's just like, his attention's divided. He can't train for the Apollo Creed rematch. And she's in this coma. And then she comes out of it, and he's been sitting by her, the bedside all this time. Thank you. And she says, her first words are, I have something to tell you. And he's like, what is it? Win. And Burgess Meredith, Mick, looks at Rocky and says, what the hell are we waiting for? That needs to be played for the Rising Stars.
The best line in Rocky 1 is from Mickey, but it is not that line. It is the line.
When he's talking about the turtles?
Women weaken legs.
Oh, yes.
I know. I honestly, I hope you're right, Devon. I guess competition in All-Star Weekend, it's been beaten out of me like the body shots that Apollo Creed took from Rocky Balboa, a left to the ribs, a right to the liver, and maybe I've just dropped to the canvas.
You know where that movie or where Sylvester Stallone got the idea from? Was a boxer by the name of Chuck Wepner.
That's right. Hold on real fast. There was a suggestion for the YouTube chat that we add a chicken chase to the skills challenge. That's pretty good.
Not bad. Did I see Buddy Hield's going to be in the three-point shooting contest?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Chavano's going to be out there. In fact, he's the betting favorite.
Oh, no.
No, he's not. Do you think he's got any chance tonight?
No.
Well, I have a bet with Granny that he's not going to make it out of the first round. Granny thinks he's going to advance. So I guess like the finals or something like that.
I hope he doesn't, because if he does, it's going to be, well, dude, where the hell's that been?
Well, I know you don't think about this. Like, it's an honor to be a part of the weekend, and it's in your hometown or hometown team, whatever. It's a lose-lose. If Buddy Hield goes up and bricks 18 threes, Warriors fans are going to be like, oh, my God, here we go. This is really going to get us juice for the last 27 games. And if he goes out and wins the thing, people are going to be like, Buddy, what the hell have you been doing for the last 2 months?
Chavano. That's a guy that's really hard to rag on because, again, I've never interviewed him. I don't know him, certainly, but he just seems like a nice human being.
No, I think he's pretty cool. I think the team loves him. But although there was one pass that I forget if it was Draymond or Curry threw out of bounds.
I saw that.
Chavano!
Yeah.
Where are you supposed to be?
It's Curry.
Yeah, Steph. Don't piss off 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Yeah, Chavano's I think he gets a bad rap, but this is kind of the same story as wherever he's been.
They do need it, a shooter. And so, I don't know, could Podziemski continue on this trend? I mean, you're so hot on Podziemski.
He's fine. He's a good player. But we did this before at the beginning of the season and last year. He plays a lot. And then you recognize that he's not a starting caliber shooting guard. And I think that, unfortunately, he's in a tough spot. Like, not that he's going to fail. I think he's going to get better, but there's going to be some games where you're like, what is he doing out there? And it's because there's no one else left to play. It's him or Chivano.
But I've said that. I haven't said that nearly as frequently over the last month. He actually looks like a number 2. So I think the one thing that you have to keep in mind with Podziemski is that he's still learning his way. We still don't know who the hell he is at the end of the day in terms of what sort of basketball player he's going to be. I mean, he has been sort of the typical first 2 years in the NBA. Comes onto the scene out of nowhere. He's beloved. He's called untouchable over the offseason, and then he sucks in the first part of the season, and now he's playing well again. I mean, this is sort of the ebb and flow on the roller coaster of a young basketball player who's trying to find their footing. So the jury's still out, I think, in terms of who he is. We're going to have to be a little patient before we label this guy. But I think his shooting, it's all confidence, right? And I really think that Jimmy Butler's addition means a lot of things. And we've discussed the majority of which, but I think that bringing out the best of players like Podziemski as well as Moses Moody, because that's exactly who Butler is. It's about energy, and it's about those making the basketball plays and hustle.
Well, if there is one attribute that Brandon Podziemski does not lack, it is confidence. So I'm not worried about that. But what I am worried about is why I thought he struggled this season early is because he was trying to do too much, or maybe he was asked to do too much. And I'm worried that it's going to fall back into that category as opposed to where he was before, where, look, in January, coming off the bench, 58% from the floor, 45 from 3. Already in 7 games in February, 3 of them starts. He's back below 30% from 3. So, and he does things that help you elsewhere. Like I think he's a really good rebounder for his size. He's a good connector, generally makes the right decision with the ball. But when you're reliant on Brandon Podziemski, I'm just saying it might come back to bite you. And that's why I also think the Warriors are better equipped now maybe to handle him playing the starting 2, is because they aren't going to have to rely on him as much.
Yeah, the reliant word now is softened a bit. Yeah. Right? The reliant is not necessarily, you don't need him to do as much, but him making those basketball plays and being the guy that gets onto the floor along with Jimmy Butler in terms of those 50-50 balls, I mean, that's sort of the new identity of this team. All right, we continue to talk about the addition to Jimmy Butler. I do want to revisit Rocky and I'm all about it now. That's right. We're renaming the what are these guys called? The
Rising Stars.
Rising
also, I hate to
Stars.
break it to you, Dan, but we're done.
Oh, that's the end of the show.
Oh, yeah. Not 9 to noon every Saturday. Warriors this week.
I'm new to this.
We're having so much fun.
All right. To be continued at the bar tonight, just between you and
I. I'll see you there.
That's right. What the hell am I doing? I'm teasing the next break, and we're out of here.
Well, you'll be back tomorrow, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm doing a pregame show tomorrow. 95.7 The Game is where you want to keep it, and we will see you at the bar tonight. All right? That's the tease. Say goodbye, Ev. So long, everybody.
Take it easy.
Safety on the roads and freeways starts at Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Your 15-minute drive.